Republican strategist Matthew Hurt is with us. Matt, great to see you again.
Good to see you.
And in London, GBNews contributor and favourite member of the GBNews family, Paul Cox, is with us. Thank you, Paul. So good to see you. Right, moving on to our main breaking news this evening. President Trump has declared that Iran has agreed never to have a nuclear weapon and says that America has already won the war.
We killed all their leadership, and then they met to choose new leaders, and we killed all of them. They're going to make a deal. They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. It was oil and gas related, and it was a very nice thing they did. But what it showed me is that we're dealing with the right people. It starts with no nuclear weapons, and they've agreed to that. There won't be any nuclear weapons. Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure. I don't like to say this. We've won this. This war has been won.
There's a lot to talk about there, not least what this present might have been. We're going to be discussing that. Let me know at home what you think it was. gbnews.com/your say. Well, tonight, a military spokesperson for the Islamic Republic has refuted the claims made by the president, and they insist that they will continue to fight until they have, quote, complete victory. And they've dismissed claims of peace talks as fake news. Meanwhile, it's been revealed that British forces shot down 14 Iranian attack drones swarming an allied base in northern Iraq last night. And the Pentagon is also reportedly preparing to send 3,000 elite troops to the region who would serve as part of America's emergency response force. And in a further potentially worrying escalation, the Iran-linked group claiming responsibility for firebombing Jewish ambulances in North London has said that it will, quote, target US and Israeli interests worldwide. Now, British defence officials have also told us now that Iran used, quote, experimental missiles to target the shared UK-US military base on Diego Garcia last week. And that follows a warning from the Israel Defence Forces, which said that Tehran could now hit targets across Europe, including London. Meanwhile, British officials are also said to be preparing to send ships to the Strait of Hormuz as part of a coalition effort to reopen the vital shipping route, as Iran is said to have laid at least a dozen mines in the strait, threatening the world's supply of energy and oil. So GB News understands this evening that the Prime Minister has tonight held a phone call with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, in which they discussed formulating a viable plan to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. So, as I say, my panel is here with me. Freddie Hayward, Matthew Hurt, Paul Cox in London. Where, fellas, do we even start? It feels, Matthew, like every single day of this conflict, and it will be 4 weeks on Saturday, there has been so many twists and turns, and it is so hard to work out what is true. What is political capital being made out of left-wing press? What is President Trump conducting the art of the deal? Are you clear tonight on where we sit? I
am cautiously optimistic about what is happening. Since the very beginning of this, I've been really wary about American interference in the Middle East, particularly in Iran. I am a hard no on boots on the ground. And with the shifting goalposts, it is very unclear what is going to happen next. I know that we cannot trust the Iranian regime. So even when they come to the table, that's a problem. But I'm really cautiously optimistic that we can get something out of this and move forward. What we've seen over the last week or so with missiles being launched at Diego Garcia and other places, it's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous situation, and I'm very concerned that American men and women are going to be placed on the ground in Iran.
Freddie, you naturally have a finely tuned BS-ometer, should we put it like that? You have a good journalistic skepticism that you bring to these sorts of situations. Do you feel like that is being tested every day at the moment in order to work out what is true?
Well, I think it's been tested for 10 years now. I think during the war, everything's got much more confusing. As you say, there are different incentives for the Iranian government, the US government, the Israeli government, the Pakistani government, the European governments, all to have slightly different narratives and to release information at different rates. We know this evening that The New York Times are reporting that Trump has sent a 15-point plan via Pakistan to the Iranian government. Obviously, the Iranian government themselves is denying that these negotiations are even going on. So it's very unclear what the Americans want to do. Yeah. It's also very unclear whether they'll be able to convince the Israelis to get on board with this peace, because we have to remember that throughout this war, what we've seen is the Israeli government and the US government has slightly different war aims, and that's key here.
And they haven't been coy about that. Tulsi Gabbard herself said we have very different aims here. But it seems that when President Trump gets up to speak, sometimes he maybe doesn't stay quite on that messaging. Is that your interpretation?
Yeah, again, that's very generous. But he's never been able to stay on message. But to acknowledge that they have different war aims, as you say, fundamentally undermines the way in which they can end the war. Because if there are two countries supposedly operating together, and they are, this is some of the closest cooperation we've ever seen between Israel and the US, how on earth do you bridge the divides between the two when you're trying to have these competing interests, both in the Knesset and in Washington here? How are they going to come together and decide, actually, this is the 15-point plan or whatever it might be, going ahead for 6 months, 9 months?
I'm not even convinced about that 15-point plan, because if you think about how much that must have dated in the last year, not least because so many layers of the senior leadership in Iran are no more. So whoever the new person is that is brought in to lead that country, and whatever that structure looks like, will there be aims from that original plan, Matt, that would be relevant in 2026?
Well, it's an excellent question. And the broader question here is, will the U.S. giving that person a seat at the table give the regime legitimacy? And if they're just going to continue what the regime has been doing for 40 plus years in Iran, is that a good thing or a bad thing for the Iranian people? Freddie made an excellent point just a minute ago by talking about Tulsi Gabbard. There are a number of individuals in the Trump administration who are opposed to regime change wars, and we are moving toward that. President Trump said in the clip just earlier, we are seeking regime change, or the regime is changing. And that is something that a number of members of the Trump administration, including Joe Kent, who departed just a week ago, are very concerned about. So as a small L libertarian who doesn't like aggressive foreign policy, I'm skittish about this and a little nervous about what's going to happen going forward.
We've been talking about these skittish people. I'm so glad I've got one on the table with me tonight. We're going to press you on that a little bit more, Matthew, as the evening goes on. Let's go now to our first guest, the research professor at the US Army War College, Dr. Azeem Ibrahim. Azeem, as always, so good to see you. Are you clear about the situation as we see it here just after midnight in the UK, just after 8 p.m. here in Washington, D.C.? Is it true when Trump says this war is won? And are you clear about what that could look like?
Well, Bev, I really do hope that the president believes what he is saying, that he believes that he has won, and that he takes these wins and starts to de-escalate the situation. Because the reality is the victory was never defined from the outset, what that would look like. It was always very confusing. Was it a regime change situation? Was it a denuclearization? Was it to get rid of their missiles? Was it to degrade Iran? It just was not clear. So I really do hope that, the US kind of just takes this win and withdraws, because the tide is going to turn, I believe, quite swiftly against America. The Iranians, I think we have to really appreciate and understand, have a real ability to absorb a lot of pain, and they would like nothing more than to have US ground forces in their territory that they can essentially then turn this into an insurgency situation. We've not seen the Iranians pull all the levers yet. At the moment, their strategy just seems to be very economic in reality, to close off the Strait of Hormuz and punish the world, who will then turn against the US and Israel for bringing about this, what they consider to be this unnecessary war. So I do hope the US takes this and tries to come to some sort of accommodation.
And let's talk about the British role in this, Azeem. Are we relevant? Should we be? Have we got involved as much as we should do, perhaps, in the eyes of the British public?
I think there's one thing, Bev, to allow the United States, our very close ally, to use British bases, whether it's in Diego Garcia or in Cyprus or elsewhere for this. But it's a very different situation in terms of actually being actively involved in a participatory kind of fashion. The reality is the UK has very little ability. We have essentially 15 surface combatant ships, and if we were to participate in anything like this and this started to escalate, it'll be hugely embarrassing for the United Kingdom if basically our ships start getting picked off in the Strait of Hormuz or even elsewhere.
Yeah. The reluctance, though, right at the beginning, Azim, to allow the Americans to use our military bases that would have prevented them from having to take these incredibly long flights, which without stopping to refuel, that, as President Trump said at the time, he won't find it easy to forget that. And it does raise the question of where our loyalties lie and to which gallery Prime Minister Starmer was playing to.
Yeah, and this is one of the things about Starmer. He's extremely indecisive. He actually doesn't know necessarily what he himself wants. He just doesn't understand a lot of these things. And I think if Starmer had said from the outset that we will support the United States in terms of providing all the logistical and their ability to use our bases, etc., but we won't be participating directly, but we will be supporting them, I think that would have actually sufficed. But him going back and forth on the bases and participating, not participating, I think it's just shown them to be a completely unreliable ally, which is something that the UK simply cannot afford.
Yeah. Yeah. OK, thank you so much, Dr. Azim Ibrahim there. Good to see you. Let's speak now to foreign correspondent here in Washington, D.C., Sarah Firth. Sarah, so nice to have you back on the show after a little break of having your baby. So it's lovely to see you. I'm sure our audience will be delighted to see you back. Sarah, you know how President Trump operates in this town. And we were saying that we know that truth is the first casualty of war, as they say. But do you feel like he's got a grip on this from a messaging point of view?
Look, President Trump's, been fairly consistent, if you like, Bev, in his inconsistency, right? We know the president likes to test out his ideas, see how he gets responses to, for example, this talk now of renewed optimism of a peace plan. We saw the markets bounce back. We saw the oil prices drop when he made what seemed to be a bit of a U-turn. And we're getting more details on that. So President Trump today at the White House speaking in the Oval Office to reporters, he expanded a bit on what he said, doubled down and said, look, there is a peace plan potentially on the horizon. Iran, he said, of course they want that. He also said that you had the likes of Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, amongst others, in the mix to potentially be the ones leading any kind of potential peace plan. So it's not unusual to see President Trump sort of go back and forth with these different ideas. We've seen it in past conflicts. We saw it in Gaza. And now we're seeing it again in this current conflict with Iran. Of course, the president's main focus is getting that Strait of Hormuz open, safe passage for the ships that go through to prevent the spike that we've seen in the gas prices and energy prices, not just here in America, but around the world. I don't know about you, Bev, but you go past the petrol pumps here, you see the signs on the garage, and it's been ticking up and down over the last week or so. That is really concerning to Americans I've been speaking to. It's concerning to the administration as well. Clearly, President Trump, though, Bev, he does say peace. A plan for peace is on the horizon.
He does, and he's always maintained that he wants to be known as the president of peace, but he also believes in peace through strength. Sarah, say what you like about President Trump, but he is very clear about what his motive is, what his ideology is, and whether he adheres to that.
Yes, and look, for all the criticism, President Trump has been very clear since the start of this conflict with Iran. This is something that has been a threat to countries around the world, not just America. And it's something that previous administrations, both Republican and Democrat, have made very clear that they've wanted to do. They've issued warnings to Iran. They've tried to negotiate. This is something that President Trump has made clear. You know, he put his money where America's mouth was, and he took the action that he says was needed to prevent Iran getting a nuclear weapon. And really interestingly, Bev, I was speaking to Ben the other day, reporting with you guys, and we were discussing the fact that you saw Iran launch that attack on Diego Garcia. I heard you speaking to our guest then about, what that would mean for the United Kingdom. That the UK doesn't have protection, for example, on the ground from ballistic missiles. And those missiles that Iran fired showed that its capability was almost twice, the reach of those missiles, almost twice would have been previously acknowledged. And it's those kinds of things that the administration are pointing to what Iran is doing and saying, look, the threat from Iran was real. It doesn't erode the fact, though, Bev, that, even amongst the sort of hardcore Republicans, there is real concern about how long this will go on for, what the main objectives here are. Again, today, President Trump, reiterating that the objective had been regime change and that they had accomplished regime change. And he also made mention, he said that there was a gift from Iran. It had to do with oil and gas. We don't know what the gift is. But he said the people that his administration and he was negotiating with were the ones who had the power here to be making those negotiations. And we know that Israeli media, they're reporting that there has been a 15-point peace plan that has gone through. And so these are all, things pointing towards there actually being some kind of game plan for talks to get underway. American media here, one outlet, Axios, reporting potentially as soon as Thursday. But there are still some pretty major unanswered questions here. We think that it would be J.D. Vance that would be heading that up. But, a lot more details that we still don't have.
Yeah. OK, Sarah, thank you so much. It's lovely to see you, Sarah Firth, there. What do you think the gift is? Just very briefly, gentlemen, what's the big gift for President from the Iranians, oil and gas?
I couldn't venture a guess, and I don't know that there was one.
You boiler?
A plane? Another plane?
A plane?
Another
Maybe?
Plane?
Don't know. Let me know at home what you think. Something for the ballroom? I don't know. It did sound a bit strange, didn't it? I've been given a fantastic new gift. I'm not going to tell you what it is, he said. Let me know what you think. GBNews.com/your say. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
We have really regime change. This is a change in the regime.
President Trump, they're hailing regime change, but peace negotiations may not be going to plan as Iran accuses Trump's top negotiators of backstabbing. The journalist behind that story, Connor Stringer, joins me next alongside geopolitical expert Katie Jones. This is The Late Show Live. Stay with me, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it? We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure. I don't like to say this. We've won this. This war has been won.
That was a very confident President Trump today, declaring that Iran have agreed never to have a nuclear weapon. He said that America has already won the war. But tonight, a military spokesperson for the Islamic Republic has refuted those claims. They've insisted they will continue to fight until they have, quote, complete victory. And they've dismissed claims of peace talks as fake news. Now, that follows Gulf sources telling the Daily Telegraph that the Iranians would not sit down with Steve Witkoff, the president's Middle East envoy, or Jared Kushner because of the military strikes that hit Tehran hours after they held talks in February. For more on that, the journalist behind that story in just a moment. But let's take a quick look at what the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, also said a little earlier today.
Never in history has a modern military Iran had a modern military, a modern navy, a modern air force, modern air defenses, leadership, massive bunker. Never has a modern military been so rapidly and historically obliterated, defeated from day one with overwhelming firepower. The air campaign that we've conducted, that Israel's conducted alongside us, was one for the history books, truly. And it's because we have a president of the United States that when he sends his war fighters out to fight, he unties their hands to actually go out and close with and destroy the enemy as viciously as possible from moment one. And that's why we see ourselves as part of this negotiation as well. We negotiate with bombs. You have a choice as we loiter over the top of Tehran, as the president talked about your future. The president has made it clear that you will not have a nuclear weapon. The War Department agrees. Our job is to ensure that. And so we're keeping our hand on that throttle as long as hard as is necessary.
So that was Pete Hegseth, of course, Secretary of War. I love the energy when President Trump steps back and he lets one of his cabinet members kind of stand up forward. It just always reminds me of a headmaster at school with one of the head boys talking, because you still know who is the boss in that room. Let's go now to Washington correspondent for The Telegraph, Connor Stringer, who broke this story, Connor, about this breakdown in trust between the American negotiators and Iran. What's happening?
You're right, Bev. A breakdown in trust indeed. So the Iranians don't particularly want Jared Kushner or Steve Witkoff at the negotiating table because they believe that they were essentially betrayed. They were in the third round of peace talks in Geneva, if you can remember, towards the middle of February, and they left that final round thinking that they were going to get a fourth and that the peace deal or some kind of negotiation to curb their nuclear program was very achievable. But just hours later, as we know, Trump began Operation Epic Fury and the war in Iran began. So they're not on good terms with those two. I know from sources in the White House as well telling me that those talks and those negotiations at the time were quite heated. On the third day, they were relatively short because Witkoff and Kushner believed there wasn't anything to gain and essentially ended up walking out of that meeting. So instead of those two, they've tonight requested J.D. Vance, who's been largely absent from this conflict, as you know, seen much more as an isolationist, a bit of a skeptic about this war. The thought being that he is one of a senior enough rank to carry out these negotiations, and I suspect they hope that, giving his position on the war, what we think it is, that he might be more inclined to get a peace deal and get this finished with.
How will that go down within the administration, though? Because surely they will say, well, it's not up to you to decide who does the negotiations. We're going to decide that. And does it put J.D. Vance in a difficult position?
It does, Bev, and the Americans are still trying to lead these negotiations tonight. The last I heard that they were still very keen to take the front foot and dictate who is in the room There's some reporting that Witkoff may already be in Islamabad in Pakistan, although it seems like no Iranians are there to join him, such as perhaps the sense of their mood around him. I think the bottom line is, Bev, is that the Americans and Donald Trump is in a tricky position. The economy and the price of oil is something they're extremely worried about. They need to get a grips on that. And I don't think they'll mind who goes in as long as they're singing from the hymn sheet, which will lead to cut enough deal that prevents Iran from getting a nuclear weapon and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which has become a deadly choke point in this war.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm asking all my guests tonight, Connor, and I'm asking the viewers at home, I'm just reading the messages here, what is this amazing, expensive gift that President Trump got from the Iranians that's to do with oil and gas?
Couple of $3 million of oil, maybe a couple of barrels that have been sanctioned, maybe sailing its way to Cuba. Who knows? I'm not sure. Who knows with the Iranians?
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit of a difficult one, isn't it? You think they might have literally given him some oil, like tankers of oil, maybe? He said it arrived today. The gifts arrived today. Arrived where?
Well, actually, funny that maybe a theory by me that might be proven correct. We know that the Americans have bought a couple of million barrels of Iranian oil that were already on their way to Cuba, I believe, in order to kind of get the economy going. I mean, whether they bought them at a discounted price or Trump is trying to spin that as a bit of a gift, who knows? But perhaps that, after all, is the gift.
Maybe. Thank you, Connor Stringer. Great to see you from the Daily Telegraph. I'm also joined in the studio now by geopolitical expert Kate Jones. Kate, always a pleasure to see you, particularly on this topic. I started the show tonight by saying it feels like for the last 4 weeks we are bombarded with information, twists and turns, and everybody is making some sort of capital or forming the narrative in the way that they want. Are you clear about where America is tonight?
I believe we're in the middle of both an escalation and a potential negotiation. Those two things are occurring simultaneously.
Explain that to me. That's interesting.
So you're seeing the 82nd Airborne, you're seeing the Marines, expeditionary forces being deployed, and they'll be arriving very soon. So that's a show of force, is it not? And so there are also these threats that within 5 days the power will be out, or at least threatened, heavily threatened by the United States. That's a pretty huge threat for Iran and for their ability to coordinate.
And I'm just wondering, is it possible, therefore, when you say we're heading towards an escalation and a negotiation, maybe you can't have one without the other when you're dealing with President Trump? What occurs to me is he is the executor of deals. That's what he does. And so he's ramping up the presence in the area, putting the pressure on the Iranians, whilst also then hoping that the soft power is happening behind the scenes in terms of the diplomacy.
Yes, you're looking at ensuring that you have the ability to negotiate under the best possible terms. That means pressure. Yeah. That means leverage, right?
Yeah.
And everybody wants to be in the best possible position. That's why Iran will be backing out of negotiations, why they'll be allowing friends to make transit through the strait, why they will be pushing on all of the economic resources. At the same time, on the U.S. side, they'll be threatening more strikes, more disabling of their capabilities, and of course the ground troops everyone has their eye on in Kark Island.
Yeah. Now let's talk about those ground troops, because we're hearing that there are troops, maybe 3,000 airborne soldiers being sent there, perhaps as many as 5,000 other troops. What's your feeling about that, Kate? What's your sense? Are we going to end up seeing these soldiers, these men and women on the ground there sorting out the situation in Iran?
That is way too early to call.
When do you think we might know the answer to that question? What will it depend upon?
Negotiation. It could happen. You know, the thing is, everyone's playing this game. And it's a poker game in which each side is trying to show its force without going overboard and unnecessarily escalating. I think they've both shown a desire to de-escalate. And so I think that at this stage, they show pressure and they're showing a desire to negotiate.
The thing is, this negotiation, this idea of this 15-point plan via Pakistan, It's not worth the paper it's written on, Kate, unless the people in power can be trusted. So surely you can't have one without the other, is what I'm saying. So whoever they are negotiating with, and that in itself is a little unclear, I think, in terms of who the Iranians that they're negotiating with, that they can agree to have no uranium enrichment, but they have to be working with somebody that's going to adhere to that. And do we have any sense of whether they are?
Well, the first question is, who are they negotiating with? Who are the names of the people that they're negotiating with? Who is having this discussion, and who is the spokesperson coming out and making a decision? You know, it could be at this stage they're somewhat decentralized.
Yeah.
And that's problematic. So we have two sides, one saying that, you know, we have these terms, we're in this great place, this is the narrative, and on the other side, Iran is not necessarily that clear on who they're putting forth.
Yeah. When you put it like that, I feel a lot less optimistic about the situation being wrapped up. If you had to decide a timescale to this, Kate, very briefly?
Oh dear. I think this is long-term, 25 years of issues.
25 years of issues going forward?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that was bleak. I've been talking to experts all week who told us we've got 2 or 3 weeks left and then everyone's going to be home and everything's going to be peaceful and lovely. No.
Well, there's a big difference between stopping fighting and stopping the strikes, and then stopping agitation.
Yeah. OK. Thank you, Kate. Kate Jones, their geopolitical expert. Let me know your thoughts this evening. And let's have a quick look now at some of the other main news here in America. A court in New Mexico has ordered Meta, that's Facebook company, probably to you, to pay $375 million for misleading users over the safety of its platforms for children. A jury found the company liable for the way in which its platforms endanger children and expose them to sexually explicit material and contact with sexual predators. A spokeswoman for Meta said the company disagrees with the verdict and intends to appeal. Also, American Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents have been deployed to airports across the country as thousands of security staff going without pay, refuse to work due to a partial government shutdown that began on February the 14th. Meanwhile, back in the UK, transgender girls have been given until September to leave the Girl Guides. The organisation says membership will now be restricted to girls and young women following last year's Supreme Court ruling defining sex as biological sex in equality law. Affected members will have until the 6th of September to leave or move into alternative roles. Girl Guiding says that it remains committed to supporting marginalised communities, but campaigners have called the decision heartbreaking. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
Your situation is very similar. You know, you have people coming in, and I told the Prime Minister I would stop it, and it doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use.
It doesn't matter what means you use. That was Trump talking at the state visit last year. Well, clearly we need a change of tack, because tonight it's been revealed that French authorities are getting worse. That's right, stopping channel crossings. What a surprise. More on that next. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Every week there are stories that shape the national conversation.
Lots of people discussing that.
And on Saturday Morning Live, we break them down.
Is that true? This is fascinating, isn't it?
The politics, the headlines, the debates everyone's talking about.
And the questions that you want answered.
Do you think that was a legitimate attack for him to make?
What led you to set up this fantastic movement?
You know what? It's a great question, Olivia.
So what are you waiting for?
Your weekend starts here. Saturdays at 10 a.m. only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mass migration is not, was not, isn't some fringe concern of little consequence.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, that was Marco Rubio, of course. It's a border crisis that will not go away for the British government. Damning figures reportedly show that France has got worse at stopping small boats crossing the Channel in the first quarter of this year. In the second week of March alone, only 68 migrants were stopped from reaching Dover as 357 arrived. Meanwhile, Home Office negotiators are set to fly to Paris to renew a £500 million migrant security deal. Now, that follows GB News is exclusively revealing on Monday that almost 1,000 small boat migrants had crossed the Channel over the course of the last 7 days. With me now is former Immigration Minister Kevin Foster. Kevin, thank you for joining us this evening to explain how it can be that France is worse at this than ever when we're still paying them hundreds of millions of pounds.
Yeah, it's the latest poor story about the French authorities really not getting a grip. We saw recently a court case where someone apparently didn't know there was a migrant crisis and getting off jail, a smuggler running a whole gang from a jail cell, and now this. And what's even worse about these numbers, Bev, is the real kicker in all this. Those who are stopped from crossing, people will be listening to this thinking, oh, are they then detained and removed from France? No. Many of them are then basically told, you know, don't be a naughty boy again, and sent on their way. And most of us can probably guess what they do next, which is try to cross again. So not only are these figures pretty dismal, but actually even those that were stopped, there's a good chance that actually some of them have tried again and ended up in the UK. So look, there's real questions for the French authorities about what are they ever going to really take this seriously. And actually, for residents of the Pas de Calais, this is much as a disaster as it is for residents of Dover, when you look at the lawlessness that it brings and they have to suffer with.
But of course, it's not in the French interest to keep them in France. That's to the point you've just made about the state of the town there. They're just going to want them on the boat. They're going to wave them off. It's all very well paying them another 500 million quid, Kevin. But what else can we do to get the French to cooperate with the British?
Well, it's got to be said, actually, you know, the criminal gangs that they are attracting to northern France are an absolute disaster for the French people. So there is an issue there to want it dealt with. But I don't think that'll happen under President Macron. He's got this idea that I think if they go away, it takes the problem. He doesn't see that. But what can we do? Well, we can carry on with what we do on negotiations. We can try and pressure, but ultimately we don't control the law on French beaches. What we actually need to look at is what's been hinted to about the US and what's already been featured on your show. You know, the US had really, since President Trump came in, has dealt with its problem on its southern border. It put a comprehensive plan in place. It used all the levers of government in trade, in visas, using the military for logistics. Has to be clear, not in an armed role, but in a, you know, assisting with removals and ensuring the US criminal justice system and courts backed up that process. So there is a way to deal with this, but I think if the current government thinks, you know, going and talking nicely to the French will somehow produce a huge change in approach, they're going to be very disappointed.
We're just not going to see anything like the muscularity over this issue, Kevin, are we, though, under this current government?
No, I think the one thing Labour needs to think to itself is, do they want the next election fought on immigration? If they do, carry on as they are, and they'll lose very, very badly. It'll just be a debate about who they lose to, because not only were they losing to parties that want to tackle it, they'll also be losing to people like the Green Party, who take a different view that appeals to certain elements of Labour vote. I think the one person we have seen start to get that very much is Shabana Mahmood, the current Home Secretary, who does seem to get that Labour's really got no path to the next general election without actually solving this. You know, not coming up with a new catchy slogan, not coming up with a whizzo idea that in about 6 months' time joins all the other whizzo ideas that both this government and, to be fair, Mr. Sunak came up with to try and solve this issue. But there is a model there. You can look at Australia. You can look at the US, you can take lessons from that and try and implement it. The issue will be for Shabana Mahmood trying to do that will be fundamentally, this is not what Labour MPs got elected to do. You know, they thought smash the gangs, it would all be solved, and it wasn't. And that's the challenge. But if a Labour government wanted to go down this path, not necessarily under Mr. Starmer, but another one, then actually they could probably look to Conservative and, for that matter, Reform MPs to help them get the legislation through. The issue is, are they prepared to take that sort of quite gutsy decision to do so?
Not at the moment, Kevin. Thank you so much. Kevin Foster there, former Immigration Minister. A Home Office spokesperson has said, right of reply here, this government is bearing down on small boat crossings. We have stopped over 40,000 crossing attempts since this government came into office through our joint work with the French. We have removed or deported almost 60,000 people who were here illegally. Our pilot deal with the French means that those who arrive on small boats are now being sent back. The Home Secretary has announced the most sweeping reforms to tackle illegal migration in modern times, removing the incentives that bring illegal migrants to the UK and scaling up the return of those who have no right to be here. It is also understood that the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is pushing for stricter terms, specifically a payment by results model in which British funds would be directly linked to the number of crossings French authorities intercept as part of a new deal. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
The president stands with ICE, I stand with ICE, we stand with all of our law enforcement officers.
Another legal case for this administration. State officials in Minnesota are suing Trump's government as they demand evidence linked to 3 federal shootings during the statewide immigration crackdown. First, though, tonight, national savings in chaos over payouts. What's that headline on the front of the Daily Telegraph about? I will tell you in just a second. Don't go anywhere. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Bev Turner. Now, still to come, the Sussexes have met their match. Australians are telling the government don't give them any money at all from the taxpayer when they come over on a trip. But there's a bit more to it than that. We'll be crossing live to Sydney to get the very latest. First, though, let's have a look at some of the main stories on the front of tomorrow's newspapers. So the Daily Express are saying no more money unless the French finally stop the boats. Yep, good luck with that. The Independent, pain at the pump. Drivers pay £307 million price of Trump's war. Apparently, Rachel Reeves warns of significant economic impact from the Iranian conflict, but she fails to announce any help for households facing higher energy bills. The Guardian is telling us that America is set to deploy airborne troops as the Middle East strikes intensify, but that's very much the narrative that The Guardian has been peddling for the last 4 years, as though President Trump really wants to ramp up this war. The iPaper, US Trumps gather in Gulf as Trump deadline nears, same issue there. And the Metro, I halted baby unit terrorist with cuddles. Now, this is a hospital worker who received the George Medal, I believe. We've not quite seen the detail of this yet, but it's a terrorist who he stopped by offering a hug. The Times, Trump prepares to seize island with elite forces. This is Karg, I presume. I can't quite see it from here. Is that what that story's about, fellas? Yeah, must be. We might have a little dig into that. And the Daily Mail, middle class to foot the bill for Reeves's benefits fuel bailout. So slightly contradicting the earlier newspapers, saying that she is going to help people with their fuel bills, but it's going to be the middle classes who are just going to pay more tax to give people on benefits a bailout. And the Mirror, would-be bomber asked me for a cuddle. That's the same story from, I think it was the Metro. And the Sun, strictly no BAFTAs. So this is apparently a front page story that Strictly Come Dancing. Do you call it Dancing with the Stars?
We do, yes.
Yeah. Well, apparently they're not going to win any awards, or they're not been nominated for any awards for the first time in 8 years. Do you find that shocking, Matthew?
I don't watch a lot of popular television.
No.
Just GB News.
Do you find it shocking? Freddie?
I've never watched it.
No, it's rubbish, isn't it? I don't watch it
So
either.
let me know if I'm missing out.
Yeah, no, you're not missing out. Joining me this evening in my studio, Freddie Hayward from the New Statesman and Republican strategist Matthew Hurt in London. I almost forgot about him. GBNews contributor Paul Cox is there, just keeping us company down the line like a long-lost family member. There he is, long-lost friend that is always there, almost like a pen pal, Paul. That's how often we get to speak to each other, isn't it? Right, more coming up in the next hour, including the very latest on this.
Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
Any idea what that was?
I am not entirely
Any idea what that was?
I assume that was part of the war.
It must be, I
Unless there's something
presume.
else going on we're not aware
I think
of.
it might be to do with Carg Island. Let's have a look at one of the front pages, shall we? What do you want to dig into, fellas? Let me go to Paul Cox and ask for his opinion. He's seen these front pages for a little longer than we have tonight. Obviously, they're hot off the press here for us in America. Paul, what do you want to have a chat about? Would you maybe explain to us what the would-be bomber cuddling story is about?
Yeah, so this would-be terrorist, believe went into a hospital in the UK last year, and I don't know how the interaction took place. I don't know if the guy that you see on the front of the mirror in the metro with the cap saw him come in and thought that doesn't look right, but essentially he went up to him, he went, "You're all right," and he understood from that conversation what he was planning to do, and he said, don't do that. Do you fancy a cuddle? Now, I'm not sure this is a strategy that's going to be rolled out, Bev, but it does appear to have worked on this particular occasion. And it makes for a great story, let's face it. If we could stop all terrorism with a hug, then that would be wonderful, Bev.
So do we think he had a bomb on him, Paul? Do we know? Was it strapped to him? Is it in his rucksack? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he did have a bomb with him. He was planning to undertake a terrorist attack. And this chap just said, do you know what, don't do that. Why don't we have a hug, maybe a cup of tea and biscuits?
Underloved men often are the ones who end up trying to destroy other people, Matthew.
Bev, I don't know if I would cuddle somebody with a bomb on them. It would be a very difficult decision.
Well, no wonder he won the George Medal. You know, I think that's wonderful. Let me have a quick look then at something else. What should we have a quick look at? What about the idea that the US troops are gathering in the Gulf? What do we know about that, Freddie? How plausible is it that there's a whole lot of them? We've only got 30 seconds.
Well, you've got these paratroopers moving over, you've got this Marine Expeditionary Force coming from Asia. It seems at the same time as these negotiations are going on, they're building up this pressure. We don't know where that's going to end. There's twin tracks. I think that's part of the confusion this evening.
Yeah, it really is. We are trying to dig through some of the confusion. This evening, we've got another 2 hours in which to do that for you, so don't go anywhere. We're going to have a very quick look at the weather.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, this is your Met Office weather forecast for GB News on this cold, blustery and showery Wednesday. A real change to the weather that we had through much of last week, the weekend, and to start this week, because now we have plenty of showers piling through. Yes, there'll be some sunny spells in between the showers, but most of us will see some rain at times, even some sleet, some snow. Could be some hail, even a bit of thunder mixed in with them as well. And all the time we need to be aware that there will be some strong blustery winds, and they will add to the cold feel of things. Temperatures are way below average for the time of year and feeling even colder, sub-zero in some places because of those strong winds coming in from the north. As we go into this evening, staying showery across, well, many parts, so further hefty showers possible across southern parts of England, across Wales over modest higher ground, something a bit wintry, some sleet, some snow. Similar across northern England, a scattering of showers here. Plenty of showers across Northern Ireland, could be some sleet and snow over higher ground. And across Scotland, well, we're more likely to see snow lying in some places here, mostly over higher ground, but perhaps a little bit to lower levels as well. As we go overnight, we'll start to see most of the showers easing and clearing away. That being said, there will still be some bursts of rain, sleet and snow in some places, but most places will turn dry. Lots of clear skies, the winds easing as well. As a result, temperatures are going to drop quite widely, getting close to, if not below freezing in a few places. And so some frost, some ice is something that we need to watch out for tomorrow morning. Otherwise, though, tomorrow actually a largely fine morning for most of us. Good deal of sunshine. Yes, it's going to be a cold, frosty start for some, but it is going to be often quite sunny through the morning. More cloud building as we go into the afternoon, particularly towards the northwest, with wind and rain pushing into the far northwest later on. Temperatures, well, similar to today, but lighter winds.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, good morning, live from Washington, D.C. This is Bev Turner on GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America tonight.
Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure. You know, I don't like to say this. We've won this. This war has been won.
The war has been won. That was a very confident President Trump earlier today, declaring that Iran has agreed never to have a nuclear weapon. He claims that what he calls the twisted regime wants to pursue peace talks.
It starts with no nuclear weapons, and they've agreed to that. There won't be any nuclear weapons.
But the Islamic Republic is vowing to fight on until they reach what they call complete victory. And tonight, up to 3,000 American troops are believed to be bracing for deployment to the Middle East. Meanwhile, the crucial Strait of Hormuz is in dire straits. Iran is believed to have planted tens of mines, threatening the world's shipping and energy. Britain is now understood to be in talks to help hunt and destroy those hidden devices. Also tonight.
You've allowed millions and millions and millions of people to come into your country that shouldn't be there. And by the way, that's all over Europe. Europe is a different place.
Border farce. Damning figures reveal that French border patrols have got worse at stopping Channel migrants this year. That's right, actually worse than they were last year. Plus, tonight.
The president stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers.
Taken to court, state officials in Minnesota are suing the Trump administration as they demand evidence linked to 3 federal shootings during the statewide immigration crackdown. Also tonight, the Sussexes. That's right, Harry and Meghan have met their match. Australians are saying that if there is any suggestion that taxpayers' money should pay for their visit, they want nothing to do with it. Meanwhile, mark your calendar. It looks like King Charles could be set to visit Washington after all at the end of April. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. My panel has just taken a little break. For now, that is Freddie Hayward from The New Statesman and Republican strategist Matthew Hurt. I've got Paul Cox in London as well tonight. But as you can see, I am joined by a guest in the studio because we are moving on to that main breaking news tonight. President Trump has declared that Iran has agreed never to have a nuclear weapon. He says America has won the war.
We killed all their leadership. And then they met to choose new leaders, and we killed all of them. They're going to make a deal. They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. It was oil and gas related, and it was a very nice thing they did. But what it showed me is that we're dealing with the right people. It starts with no nuclear weapons, and they've agreed to that. There won't be any nuclear weapons. Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure. I don't like to say this. We've won this. This war has been won.
But tonight, a military spokesperson for the Islamic Republic has refuted those claims. They've insisted they will continue to fight until they have, quote, complete victory, and they've dismissed claims of peace talks as fake news. Meanwhile, it's also been revealed that British forces shot down 14 Iranian attack drones swarming an allied base in northern Iraq last night. The Pentagon is said to be preparing to send 3,000 elite troops to the region who would serve as part of America's emergency response force. And in a further worrying escalation, the Iran-linked group claiming responsibility for firebombing the Jewish ambulances in North London has said that it will target, quote, US and Israeli interests worldwide. Now, British defence officials have also told us that Iran used, quote, experimental missiles to target the shared UK-US military base on Diego Garcia last week. That follows a warning from the Israeli Defence Forces, which said that Tehran could now hit targets across Europe, including London. Meanwhile, British officials are also said to be preparing to send ships to the Strait of Hormuz as part of a coalition effort to reopen the vital shipping route, as Iran is said to have laid at least a dozen mines in the strait, which would, of course, threaten not only the ships, but the world's supply of energy and oil. Now, GB News understands that the Prime Minister has tonight held a phone call with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia in which they discussed formulating a viable plan to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And this is what the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, said earlier today.
Never in history has a modern military, Iran had a modern military, a modern navy, a modern air force, modern air defenses, leadership, massive bunker. Never has a modern military been so rapidly and historically obliterated, defeated from day one with overwhelming firepower. The air campaign that we've conducted, that Israel's conducted alongside us, was one for the history books, truly. And it's because we have a president of the United States that when he sends his war fighters out to fight, he unties their hands to actually go out and close with and destroy the enemy as viciously as possible from moment one. And that's why we see ourselves as part of this negotiation as well. We negotiate with bombs. You have a choice as we loiter over the top of Tehran, as the president talked about your future. The president has made it clear that you will not have a nuclear weapon. The War Department agrees. Our job is to ensure that. And so we're keeping our hand on that throttle as long as hard as is necessary.
Now that, of course, is the Ministry of War, Pete Hegseth. Well, I'm delighted to say I'm joined now in the studio by former Defence Intelligence Officer and Middle East Analyst in the Pentagon, Ubay Shabandar. Ubay, so good to see you again. Where do we start? You just go. You know this topic. You know exactly what's happened in the last few moments. Bring us up to speed on the latest.
Well, the mainstream media does not talk about enough on how internally Iran is facing a significant amount of chaos within its leadership, command and control structure, and its military higher command. We are seeing indications from Western intelligence that the American and Israeli and allied bombing and airstrikes and missile strikes against Iran have significantly dampened the ability of the Iranian military command to organize a viable counterattack against the U.S. and against its allies. It's very notable that most of the missiles, ballistic missiles, and kamikaze drone strikes that Iran has launched has not even been mostly against Israel, but against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, America's Arab Gulf allies. And that has led to recent fresh reports that these Arab allies are getting closer to directly and openly supporting offensive strikes. We might see Saudi aircraft, Emirati aircraft from Abu Dhabi and others in the Arabian Gulf countries being much more direct and much more aggressive in countering Iran. There is a real sense in these Arab capitals that you cannot leave a wounded bear, that the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guards, if they are not totally decimated, if their production facilities of these long-range missiles and kamikaze drones are not totally eradicated, that these Arab capitals will be left vulnerable for future attacks. And we're seeing intelligence from Washington and from the region as well, from the Israelis, that these strikes are really having a significant impact. Are the Iranians still able to launch a small amount of drones and ballistic missiles? Yes. But the more that we see these public remarks from the Iranians saying that they are demanding these maximalist demands, that is a reflection of just how desperate and more desperate that they are becoming because of the military balance on the ground.
How significant would that be if those Gulf neighbours started to get involved with a more offensive attack on Iran? Have we ever seen anything like that, Ubay?
No, we have not up to this point, but the fact that we've seen public statements from the United Arab Emirates, that we are seeing these new reports coming that the Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, is increasingly aligned with the U.S. and telling President Trump, you must finish this job. You cannot leave an Iran that's wounded, because we, the Arab countries, will face the consequences of this hegemony of the Iranian Islamic Republic.
What are they waiting for? What would be the trigger, appropriate word, what would be the trigger for them to start getting involved?
That's a very good question. I think if you see more Iranian attacks against critical energy infrastructure, particularly those massive Saudi oil fields, most of Saudi's major oil fields are in the eastern part of the country, easily within range of the Iranian Shahed drones. We've seen these strikes by Iran against Qatar, its liquefied natural gas facilities, forcing Qatar to significantly reduce its exports. That is the strategy of Iran, to try to strike terror in the heart of America's Arab allies, attempting to force a divide between the U.S., Israel, and its Arab allies. That seems to have had the opposite intended effect. It has led to a rally around the flag sort of consequences, where these Arab countries are much more behind the U.S. and Israel in finishing the job against Israel, against the Iranian Islamic Republic, even though many of these countries initially, when President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu launched Epic Fury, many of these Arab countries were against this conflict, but now they realize that, look, Iran wants their total destruction because of the radical revolutionary ideology of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which wants the total destruction and subjugation of the Arab region.
I've said it before and I say it again, there's nothing like a joint adversary to bring previous enemies together, is there? And that, ironically, is probably one of the things that is happening in the last 3 to 4 weeks, and we'll go on to. I had a geopolitical expert in here just before Kate, who was telling us that she thinks this is the start of 25 years of unsettled. She didn't say chaos, and we didn't really have time to dig into it, but she wasn't suggesting this is going to signal a period of peace going forward. But you have other commentators who say this is the very best chance of a grand regional peace settlement. What needs to be in place, Ube, to have the latter outcome, which is surely the most preferable?
Well, President Trump has given an olive branch an opportunity, perhaps the very last opportunity for what's left of the leadership in Tehran to accept a deal with the United States, with Israel, and with the moderate Arab coalition in the region. Mohammad Ghalibaf, the head of parliament in Iran, is the likely de facto leader.
Now, he denied that yesterday, didn't he?
Understandably,
because President Trump said, we're talking to some very powerful people, but he didn't say who. The speculation was it was him, and he said it's not me, because presumably that would put his life under threat.
Indeed. Those talks, those negotiations behind the scenes are definitely happening. The reason why Ghalibaf and the spokesperson of Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs are denying that these talks are taking place with the Trump administration is because there's an internal divide. There are competing power centers within the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards that are not completely aligned with one another, and they want to each one of these competing power centers wants to be the supreme leader. The so-called supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, the son of the late Ayatollah, is likely totally incapacitated, if not dead.
We're seeing statements on his behalf, but no one's seen him. That's right.
No one has seen him. And if he was alive, he would have absolutely produced visual evidence of this. So what that means is that you are left with all these senior generals within Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards who are going to fight one another, perhaps kill one another, to become the new top leader. And that is the genius of President Trump's art of the deal here. He knows that by extending an olive branch and by publicly declaring that he is speaking with Ghalibaf, that is going to lead to even further fractioning and divides internally within Iran's increasingly, divided leadership.
And Ghalibaf, is that how you pronounce his name? Ghalibaf. What is he like? He's pretty hardline, isn't he?
He is pretty hardline, but they are all hardline. Look, we've seen in the mainstream news media, Jake Sullivan, President Obama's, former senior national security advisor and Hillary Clinton's national security advisor, has been making the rounds on American news networks saying that you've only empowered the hardliners. That's not the case. That's not what's happening. They're all hardliners. The question is, which one of them is ultimately willing to realize that Iran is not in a position to dictate terms, that if they do not accept the deal that is on the table now, they will face total destruction. So this false narrative that Jake Sullivan and other Obama and Hillary Clinton and Biden acolytes going out there on news networks trying to present that you're only empowering even more radical leaders, that is simply not the case. They're all within the same ideological framework.
I hate to admit, I fell asleep last night listening to Bill Clinton talking about this, because there's just so much, it put me to sleep, but there's just so much information to take in at any given point on this particular issue, isn't there? It just feels completely overwhelming at times to know where we are at with it. And in terms of this idea that the trust in the negotiations has gone, what do you make of that, Ube? The idea that they don't want to talk anymore to Witkoff, they want to bring in J.D. Vance. Does that sound plausible?
Yeah, that might be just a negotiating ploy. The Iranians have said, we don't want to talk with Steve Witkoff, President Trump's Middle East envoy. We want to talk to J.D. Vance. That is another sign of desperation. Essentially what the Iranians are trying to say is that, well, there's a divide internally within President Trump's administration. They're deflecting. And
they're playing the same game back.
They're playing the same game.
And let me just ask you finally, we're having all of these conversations about the mullahs who would replace him. We're talking about the military. How are the Iranian people tonight? Do we have any idea?
The Iranian people have been told by President Trump and by Israeli leadership, wait until the bombing ends when it's safe before you try to take your country back. So many of the residents of Tehran, there's no bomb shelters in Tehran. So the residents of these big cities in Iran, what they do is they have to seek safety. They have to exit the city. It's too dangerous right now with the U.S. still launching waves and wave of strikes, and with Israel launching wave and wave of strikes. It's too dangerous to take to the streets. What we have seen, though, are specific strikes by the U.S. military and by the Israeli military targeting the besieged, the internal secret police and the paramilitary forces that the Ayatollah uses to attack Iranian civilians, to kill thousands, if not tens of thousands of Iranian civilians that have taken to the streets multiple times throughout this year and the past decade to try to take their country back. The sentiment that we're seeing in Iran is that the people want the end and the fall of this regime. They are waiting for the right opportunity to take to the streets.
Yeah, Ube, you're amazing. Thank you so much. Your insight is just second to none. Such a pleasure to have you on GB News. Thank you so much. Ube Sharbanda there. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. Harry and Meghan have met their match tonight. Furious Australians have set up a petition to tell the government, do not use taxpayers' money to get these two liggers over to Australia. Thank you. Does this mean the royal glamour is finally wearing off? And I will tell you what Meghan is going there to do. It's quite bonkers. Don't go anywhere. I'll bring you the latest live from Sydney shortly. First, though, tonight.
Free speech in this country has been for a very long time. We're very, very proud of it. We will protect it forever.
So this is a fascinating story. A new roadmap has been drawn up which could form the basis of an overhaul of free speech in the UK, and it may make uncomfortable reading for the government. I will be talking to the man behind it tonight. This is The Late Show Live. No breaks, remember, only on GB News.
GB Loyalty Points is here. They're our way of saying thank you for spending time with GB News. Through commenting on your say, voting in You Decide polls and shaping the debate, you can earn GB Loyalty Points. Unlock rewards, reach milestones and climb leaderboards. Don't just watch our programmes, come and be part of them. Get started by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/loyalty points.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I'm just going to read out some of your comments because you always tell me off for not reading them out. John said, I think it's Trump who wants the Iran deal and not Iran themselves because of this year's midterm elections in November. Jackie has said, I can't trust anything that Iran promises. And Beverly says, I think the king should go to America. Graham said, it's crystal clear. A full invasion once the pieces are in place and Trump becomes the saviour. And B says, Trump's greatest strength is unpredictability. He keeps everyone guessing, so the enemy doesn't get the heads up either. Even leaks can't be verified, and that gives a tactical advantage. Right, keep your messages coming. gbnews.com/your say. Right, I'm dying to do this story because a new roadmap has been drawn up which could form the basis of an overhaul of free speech in the UK. Now, this comes courtesy of free speech lawyer, regular on Late Show Liar, Preston Byrne, who is representing American companies against censorship from Britain. Have a quick look.
And on free speech, that has long lived in this country, free speech. It's one of the founding values of the United Kingdom, and we protect it jealously. And so that's the balance we strike. But we have had freedom of speech in this country for a very long time, and we will always protect it.
I think that was Preston Byrne's own X account. Meanwhile, peers are once again set to debate restricting social media for under 16s as hundreds of teenagers take part in a trial of social media bans and curfews. Now, this is a pilot run by the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, which will see 300 young people aged 13 to 17 from across the UK try out restrictions on social media in order to see if it impacts things such as schoolwork and sleep. Let's speak to the hero of the day, digital rights and free speech lawyer Preston Byrne, who joins me now. Let's start with that first story, Preston, about great to see you, about your bill to protect free speech in the UK. Tell us what this is, Preston. Just explain it to us, please.
Yeah, sure. So your audience knows me in the context of fighting your communications regulator, Ofcom, but that's not something you just decide to do overnight. I've in fact been mapping British censorship pretty obsessively, how it's used, what provisions are used, the cases that occur for the last 10 years. And recently, in the last year or so, I met two people who have also been doing the same thing. And we got together and we decided, what we're going to do? There are a lot of different doors, right?
So we can't hear him very well.
Can you not hear me too well? Shall I try zooming in a bit?
Sorry, no, it's fine. It was just I was talking to the gallery. I was told my mic was out. You carry on. Free speech, you see, free speech. We can just talk over each other all the time. Go on.
Exactly. So basically, we found all the little doors that the British state has been going through to censor people, and we wrote a bill that puts locks on all of those doors and prevents them from doing that. So we mapped out the whole censorship state, all of the bills. There are tons of repeals, 8 acts of parliament repealed in full. And we specify a free speech right that's very similar to that exists in America, but it's been designed to work within the British constitutional system.
So you've spent a long time doing this, Preston, haven't you? As you say, it is a very detailed document with multiple, how many pages is it? How many different points of order are there in there?
So there are 40 pages, 31 sections, 6 schedules. We create 4 new public order offenses, 2 new communications offenses. The core right consists of 2 clauses. It's huge. It's absolutely titanic. And it's been properly formatted in parliamentary style. It's ready to be introduced as far as we're concerned. Now, we're under no illusions about whether Labour is going to introduce it. Obviously, they won't. But perhaps some party which is interested in reforming the system might be interested in introducing it at some future date.
So you have basically done all the heavy lifting for a British government that wants to protect free speech in a way that would potentially mirror what you have here in America. Have you done this just in your own time, Preston? This is your idea of fun, isn't it?
This is my hobby, yes. I do it on nights and weekends. So I have the bill in front of me now. We're just doing the final set of markups. This is what I do for fun.
And so what's the next steps then? Have you got this under the noses of politicians yet? Kemi Badenoch might be interested in seeing it.
Yeah, I think a couple of politicians know it's coming. Not too many politicians have seen the final bill. I think one member of the House of Lords I just emailed the bill to. But really, this is going to be offered to the British public. As we're going to publish it through the Adam Smith Institute, which is a nonpartisan think tank, and it's going to be available for anyone who's interested in it to pick it up. Obviously, it's our vision of what a free Britain looks like, which is going to be very different from the political parties and other people. But really, this is a proof of concept. It's designed to teach English politicians and English activists, listen, there is a way within your constitutional system that you can replicate American free speech protections, and we think that this is the approach. So we really want the bill to be critiqued. We want people to bolt on new ideas to it, take things away from it, determine what's politically acceptable, what might not be. And hopefully some of the the grassroots activists for the Tories, Labour, or even Labour, actually, to be blunt, sort of the classical leftists in Labour. And, this is really not a partisan effort, and we're hoping that a lot of people look at it and decide that it might be for them.
Now, of course, the British government and Ofcom, Preston, would say, well, our job, we already protect free speech in the UK. Ofcom would say, if you look at our broadcasting regulations, we have to provide balance, we have to give everybody a fair hearing. How is that not free speech?
Yeah, because it's the government controlling speech. What this bill is designed to do is something very simple. It gets the British government, out of the business of policing the opinions of the British people. The government doesn't get a say in the future that we see. in what people say and think. It's not going to be able to arrest people for it. It's not going to be able to penalize them for it. It's not going to be able to force them to say things that they don't want to say, as occurs, for example, with certain DEI mandates. So from our point of view, the objective is get the government out of the business of policing opinions. And the British government does rather a lot of that at the moment.
How do they do that, though? Give us an idea of how they are policing free speech and why, or how, I guess, your bill would row back on that.
Sure. So, for example, under the public order offenses, the way that they're currently drafted, essentially, if you show up somewhere and someone else is going to get violent as a result of your presence or your lawful expression, what can happen is you can get arrested for that. So there was an example at a pro-Palestinian march in London a couple of months ago where a fellow who is Jewish was wearing a kippah in public. And a police officer in London said, listen, you're too visibly Jewish at this protest. If you don't leave, we're going to arrest you. And so that's an example of where we call that the heckler's veto in the United States, where people who are violent have the ability to silence people who are nonviolent because of their violence. And this is something that we've seen a pattern of time and time again. You also see things like social media posts. People get offended. Graham Linehan is one such instance where he posted something that offended somebody and he was arrested for malicious communications, or rather grossly offensive communications under the Communications Act. And these are all examples where the government steps in and says, listen, you're engaged in perfectly lawful activity, or something that most reasonable people would regard as activity which should be lawful, and we're going to threaten you with arrest for it. And this bill would abolish all of that.
Yeah, because he was actually accused of antagonizing the protesters, I guess, in that situation. She says providing the balance required by Ofcom. Now, let me also just talk to you about this, Preston, which this is about this pilot that's going to be run by a government department, and they're going to take 300 young children, I said this, age 13 to 17, and they're going to restrict their social media in order to see an impact on things such as schoolwork and sleep. I mean, I can save them the job, to be frank. I've noticed it myself. My 17-year-old has had her TikTok consumption reduced to half an hour. Guess what? She started playing the piano. You don't need to have a system like this and a trial that costs taxpayers money to work out these things. But where do you think these sorts of trials are going? Because you have free speech concerns, don't you, over this restriction of the digital world to teens?
I mean, the difference between a parent doing it and a government doing it is that when the government does it, they do it at gunpoint, at the end of the barrel of a gun. That's what government speech controls and speech mandates do. My clients in the United States who don't want to comply with British speech mandates have all been threatened with arrest. And ultimately, arrest means that they're going to send men with guns, right, to go and pick you up and throw you in a jail cell. So that's, in America, that's not the case. You know, in our country, we think that parents are responsible for the content that their children consume, and that's not a responsibility for the state. And so this bill basically says, listen, we're trying to create a world where people are free to make individual decisions about what content they consume, how they consume it, you know, what content their children can see using readily available tools online and on devices. There are tons of parental controls, for example, on Apple devices or Google operating systems that people can implement, or you can just take the thing away. I think the safety lobby always falls back on saying, oh, well, you know, all of our censorship rules, they're all about protecting kids. I don't know that the grannies on Parliament Square who got arrested for holding up paper signs saying, I support Palestine action on them. I'm not sure that that's really protected anybody, right, except the state and the government. So this bill is designed to address a very wide range of censorship problems. I'm cognizant that, you know, just because a bunch of, you know, policy wonks decided to write a bill doesn't mean it can be enacted. But we're trying to show the way, right? Listen, if you want to get the government out of the business of policing opinions, this is the way that you would do it, or at least the way that we would do it. And if that's something the British people want, then it's something that they can decide to vote for and enact.
What do you say, though, about the fact that there are rubbish parents there who will let their kids just basically consume inappropriate social media content for hours and hours and hours on end, and those people need the support of the government?
I mean, if they need the support of the government, they can go voluntarily get it. I'm not sure we want to live in a world. We've seen what Ofcom has done. They're trying to threaten American citizens with arrest, reach outside of the UK into the United States to punish Americans. And, you know, over here in America, we have free speech, and it's not some crazy dystopian hellscape that we live in. We're actually a pretty productive, healthy, and economically well-off country. So I'm not sure that I buy the argument that if you don't have a state-backed or state-sponsored censorship regime, that your country and your society is going to fall apart, because the United States doesn't have any of that, and we're doing pretty well.
Okay, Preston Byrne, thank you so much for that insight. Just to give you a right reply, Technology Secretary Liz Kendall has said, "We are determined to give young people the childhood they deserve and to prepare them for the future. This is why we are listening to parents, children and experts with our consultation, as well as testing different options in the real world. These pilots will give us the evidence we need to take the next steps, informed by the experiences of families themselves." And on the broader issue of free speech in Britain, Sir Keir Starmer has previously said free speech is one of the founding values of the United Kingdom and we protect it jealously, fiercely and always will. And a spokesman for Ofcom has also previously said Ofcom is not a censor. Freedom of expression is at the heart of our broadcasting rules, and our rules do not prevent the broadcast of content that may be deemed offensive or controversial to some audiences. I feel like I need a glass of water after that, gentlemen. Thank you for waiting patiently while I finish my free speech. Now, let's have another quick look at some of the other big stories here in America tonight. A court in New Mexico has ordered Meta to pay $375 million for misleading users over its safety of its platform for children. A jury found the company liable for the way in which its platforms endangered children and exposed them to sexually explicit material and contact with sexual predators. A spokeswoman for Meta said the company disagrees with the verdict and intends to appeal. Also tonight, US immigration and customs enforcement agents have been deployed to airports across the country as thousands of security staff going without pay refused to work due to a partial government shutdown. That began on February the 14th. Meanwhile, back in the UK, transgender girls have been given until September to leave the Girl Guides. The organisation says that membership will now be restricted to girls and young women following last year's Supreme Court ruling defining sex as biological sex in equality law. Girl Guiding says that it remains committed to supporting marginalised communities, but campaigners have called the decision heartbreaking. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
The president stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers.
That story about the state officials in Minnesota suing the Trump administration as they demand evidence linked to 3 federal shootings during the statewide immigration crackdown. I'll tell you exactly what's going on there. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. A very quick look at your very rainy weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. This is your Met Office weather forecast for GB News on this cold, blustery and showery Wednesday. A real change to the weather that we had through much of last week, the weekend, and to start this week, because now we have plenty of showers piling through. Yes, there'll be some sunny spells in between the showers, but most of us will see some rain at times, even some sleet, some snow. Could be some hail, even a bit of thunder mixed in with them as well. And all the time we need to be aware that there will be some strong blustery winds, and they will add to the cold feel of things. Temperatures are way below average for the time of year and feeling even colder, sub-zero in some places because of those strong winds coming in from the north. As we go into this evening, staying showery across, well, many parts, so further hefty showers possible across southern parts of England, across Wales over modest higher ground, something a bit wintry, some sleet, some snow. Similar across northern England, a scattering of showers here. Plenty of showers across Northern Ireland, could be some sleet and snow over higher ground. And across Scotland, well, we're more likely to see snow lying in some places here, mostly over higher ground, but perhaps a little bit to lower levels as well. As we go overnight, we'll start to see most of the showers easing and clearing away. That being said, there will still be some bursts of rain, sleet and snow in some places, but most places will turn dry. Lots of clear skies, the winds easing as well. As a result, temperatures are going to drop quite widely, getting close to, if not below freezing in a few places. And so some frost, some ice is something that we need to watch out for tomorrow morning. Otherwise, though, tomorrow actually a largely fine morning for most of us. Good deal of sunshine. Yes, it's going to be a cold, frosty start for some, but it is going to be often quite sunny through the morning. More cloud building as we go into the afternoon, particularly towards the northwest, with wind and rain pushing into the far northwest later on. Temperatures, well, similar to today, but lighter winds.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
I just saw a video of more than 6 masked agents pummeling one of our constituents and shooting him to death.
So, do you remember that guy? That's Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. He was really annoyed in January after the shooting of Alex Pretty by Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents. Well, they were cooking up a legal case because tonight the state of Minnesota has sued the Trump administration in efforts to access evidence about 3 federal shootings, including that one, of course, at the hands of ICE officers. Now, the lawsuit alleges that officials refused to give Minnesota basic information, including the names of federal agents involved in the shootings. Earlier today, Mark Wayne Mullin was sworn in as the new head of the Department of Homeland Security, overseeing immigration enforcement and border protection, taking over the role from Kristi Noem.
And we're thrilled to swear in our new Secretary of Homeland Security, a great American patriot, to put it mildly, Mark Wayne Mullin. And I want to just say, Mark Wayne, congratulations. Great. Thank you, sir. You deserve it. You're a great man.
So he now has a big job to do. Let's talk to the New Statesman's Freddie Hayward and Republican strategist Matthew Hertz and Paul Cox in London about this. How big are those shoes he has to fill? Because Kristi Noem was she was a recognisable character, the baseball cap, the glamour, the hair, the lips, the makeup, the lashes. Every time she was on the telly behind a lectern, there was something slightly anomalous, which I know is a deeply sexist thing to say, but there was something slightly anomalous about Kristi Noem. She did a good job, obviously not good enough. You didn't think she did a good job. Trump's moved her sideways. He hasn't actually kicked her out. They've done it nicely. They've stayed friends. But this guy, who is he? What kind of role is he? How is he going to be different to Kristi Noem?
So he's a Trump loyalist. He was in the House for 10 years and then he was in the Senate relatively briefly. So he's there to essentially trying to get a grip of the agency again. There was much anger after Minneapolis. Within the White House, I don't think about the actions of the agents themselves, but I would have thought it more to do with the backlash itself. This is it sort of sums up the fact that the administration has struggled to grapple with some of the questions around immigration. They're unsure about how far they should go. There's been some pushback that Donald Trump has responded to. He's done something similar over the past 2 years when we think about his remarks on farmers and agricultural visas. So he does move around, and we don't really know what Mark Mullin will do. He's said contradictory things throughout his hearings and before his hearings and after his hearings. So let's see. But this is it's a new stage and chapter within the administration, their immigration policy.
Yeah. How will he do you think? He's an ex-MMA fighter, isn't he? He's got sort of cauliflower ears. We're looking at him here. I mean, you think he would be a prop for the England rugby team looking at him. But how will he get on in this role? Because it's not an easy job.
Well, and Bev, we saw last week it play out with Republican Senator Rand Paul, who had a very strong personal grievance. I think in the total confirmation vote, we had one Democrat cross the aisle to vote for him, and of course Senator Paul, the Republican, crossed the aisle and voted no. These are big shoes to fill. I think that Kristi Noem was a significant distraction. There were a lot of questions about the improper use of DHS resources to spend $200 million or more on advertising, essentially promoting
an airplane.
And the airplane and a number of things, the no-bid contracts to people who were in her orbit.
Yeah.
And that is something, as a conservative, I want my government to be efficient and I want them to be transparent and ethical. Yeah. And so somebody like that just has to go. She got moved aside. Mark Wayne Mullin gets to start with a sort of a clean slate as we go into the last 2.5 years of the Trump administration, and I hope that he can do the job, especially as we see what's going on in Minneapolis with the potential lawsuit. That is the big questions, and he's going to have to hit the ground running this
And
week.
just before I go to Paul on this, where is America on the issue of ICE now? there was a time in Minnesota when it was literally leading every single bulletin. It's very much fallen off the agenda, hasn't it? Why?
It's not making the headlines now, except for the prospect that President Trump may deploy ICE to airports because of the lack of DHS funding by Democrats in the Senate. Now, this is a crazy, you could call it 4D chess if you like, if that is something that you ascribe to. But for Democrats to withhold DHS funding, which funds TSA, which is airport security, and for President Trump to then say, I'm going to deploy ICE into these airports, if you don't provide the funding for TSA and for other agencies, that puts Democrats in a peculiar spot for the next few days.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul Cox. It's hard to know what to ask you this. It's a very American story, this, because we have border force, of course we do. We don't have the equivalent of ICE that go knocking on people's doors. We wouldn't see a situation, I don't think, in which the government could be sued by a county, I suppose it would be in our case. I'm trying to think about the parallel here. But I think there are a lot of people in the UK that would quite like us to have a more muscular ICE force, if you like, knocking on doors and getting people out and telling them to sling their hook.
Yeah, if we wanted to protect our borders, we would probably need something like ICE. I mean, obviously, we're not federalised in the UK, and essentially all of our police forces are under one umbrella. Of course, you've got the Met Police and stuff like that in London, and I'm sure you've got similar things in Birmingham and Manchester. Interesting guy, though. I wasn't aware of him before this evening, but he's also a member of the Cherokee Nation. So he ran his own family plumbing business. He's an MMA fighter, as you said, and he's also a member of the Cherokee Nation, which I believe is the largest recognised Native American tribe in the US. So he's quite an interesting guy, very much of America as well. And I think the one thing that's definitely unusual about ICE is they seem to be directly at the behest of the president. We have nothing like this in this country. And I'm, to be honest, quite glad that Keir Starmer doesn't have his own what should we say, Gestapo, but because if he did, you and I would be in a lot of trouble, Bev.
I'd hang out in the gulags with you, Paul Cox, don't you worry about that. But, I mean, it's, but so just on that point, we were just saying, so this guy, Mark Wayne Mullins, do we think he's Native American Indian? Is that what he's suggesting, that he's part of? Is that part of his identity? Do you know, Freddie?
Well, I think he's said that he is part of that nation, so I think that means he has heritage within the Native American community. Yeah.
Oh. Cool.
And Bev, a representative from Oklahoma. I mean, that is a significant population, and not to reopen the history books on America's sordid history on moving native populations across the continent, but Cherokees were moved from the southeast, Tennessee, North Carolina, Kentucky, to Oklahoma for reservation resettlement. And so it is, there are many people in Oklahoma and northern Texas and that part of the country who may have Native American ancestry or heritage.
Do you know what this story makes me think of? How rare it is for this version of President Trump to change his staff. If you cast your mind back, Freddie, to his first term, where every 5 minutes he was getting rid of people every 5 minutes. I mean, you were probably about 10 years old then, Freddie. So, but that was my overriding recollection of that presidential period of time. Is that every 5 minutes there was an announcement that he'd sacked someone. Doesn't do it now, does he? Why, Freddie?
Well, because he has people around him that are much more loyal to him. They're much more empowered. That's why we have these splits within the administration. We have these competing factions, all of whom are slightly different ideologies. It leads to a completely different government, a different type of government, and it means that Donald Trump actually has much more control over what goes on, and we are seeing policy implemented to a much quicker and greater extent than
and phenomenal stability, actually. I'm sure, looking from across the pond, Paul Cox, people will depict this country as chaotic. That's the thing. Oh, no one ever knows what President Trump's going to do. It's really easy to know what he's going to do if you're watching carefully, but it's all chaotic. The stability in this town is remarkable. I don't think we've ever seen a Western government have this much loyalty wrapped around the president. You're laughing at me, Freddie. I'm going to let you come back in. No, go on. You're allowed to take the mickey out of me. I don't mind. But do you not see that? Do you not see how loyal they are?
Well, loyal. I mean, do you really want your nation loyal to the president? Perhaps enforced by, I think Paul described the ICE as a Gestapo earlier. I think another point we should probably make on ICE, which I think is really important, is that Donald Trump has built up this militia, which is largely under his control. And we have the midterms coming up, and this has constantly been a concern. And it's not something that's really spoken about from administration officials. But Steve Bannon, who's this sort of MAGA shaman, this MAGA ideologue, who is one of the many people that have some influence within the administration, he suggested yesterday that ICE's involvement in the airports was a precursor to their involvement in the midterm. So it's definitely something to watch there.
Yeah, I don't think Steve Bannon is he taken that seriously by this government anymore?
He's one of many, many people. I think his influence has been overestimated in the past, but he still has a little bit.
I agree. What do you think, Matthew?
Well, Bev, what I would add is we had a really unique situation from 2020 to 2024 where we essentially had a government in waiting, which the American presidency is rarely experienced, where in Washington, D.C., organizations like America First Policy Institute and the Heritage Foundation and many others were able to professionalize the operation and retain the talent from the first administration, people who were loyal to President Trump then, and then they built out the infrastructure so that on day one we saw so many confirmations at the beginning of 2025, cabinet secretaries and many other political appointees who had stuck around in Washington, D.C. for 4 years and figured out how the government works. What some people don't realize is the Heritage Foundation released a 1,000-page book that said this is what President Trump should do on day one of the second administration. And I think for those who are supportive of President Trump, that gap, that Joe Biden gap that we experienced for 4 years in the United States was actually a benefit to President Trump. It allowed him to hit the ground running with people who knew how the government worked and where the quote-unquote bodies were buried.
Interesting. Right, I'm going to move on to a guest on this because this lawsuit, of course, alleges that officials refused to give Minnesota basic information. So let's talk now to my guest, that is US Senate candidate for Massachusetts, John Deaton. Good evening, John. What more do we know about this legal case? So nice to see you again. What do we know about this? And is it going to be incredibly time-consuming, problematic for this government?
Oh, sure. Thanks for having me, Bev. Always good to be with you. Listen, what we have here is a classic case of state sovereignty versus the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution and the federal government, because Minnesota is saying that they have the right to investigate any death on their soil, and the United States government should get out of the way and cooperate and give them the identity and give them access to evidence and crime scenes and ballistic reports or any of that stuff. And the United States has basically said, the federal government, that, listen, an officer who is on state land exercising their duties is supreme at Trump's, pun intended, any state law. And so, you don't need this information. And it's going to be a battle in the court. And we'll see a ruling from a judge, and then we'll go to an appellate judge, and then maybe the Supreme Court.
And yet again, John, in the background is a load of lawyers making a load of money out of these situations. And this will be taxpayers' money, of course, that will be spent on this, will it not? And will it set a precedent, do you think, for if this is successful, for other states around the country to do something similar?
Well, it should, but and just think about this. This is the problem, Bev, is that politics are going to inevitably get in the way. And the United States federal government has an argument that, listen, this would open the Pandora's box and allow 50 states to interfere with federal law enforcement and try to basically prosecute federal agents in doing and exercising their lawful duties, and therefore would invalidate, supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution, and it would be the state government trying to dictate based on politics. And as we know from ICE, it wouldn't take a lot of the state government to want to engage in politics. We just saw this where I live in Boston. You have an officer who's been arrested and charged within 8 days of a shooting of a guy who used a car, and he has 17 convictions, by the way, or arrests, as to run them over, and now he's being prosecuted, and it's all because of politics getting in the way.
Yep. Never a good thing. John, always good to see you. John Deaton there, Senate candidate for Massachusetts. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. This is the front page of The Independent. Pain at the pump. Drivers are going to pay £307 million. Apparently that is the price of Trump's war. Do you think that is a fair headline? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. So let's have a look at some of these front pages. Of course, the joy of being on at this time of the night is that we can tackle these stories before anybody else does, pretty much. So this is The Independent. Pain at the pump. Drivers pay £307 million, the price of Trump's war. Freddie Hayward, is that a fair assessment of the situation?
I'm not sure about that grammar, but it seems that the broader point that this war is going to cost a lot, particularly for people in Europe, particularly for people in Britain, is certainly true. It's very clear that this administration has thought nothing about the way in which Brits, French, Spaniards were going to be impacted by the strikes. America has its own oil and gas. Europe does not. That's why we're much more dependent on what comes out of the Persian Gulf. I think we're seeing a genuine and real consequence of the disdain that the administration has for Britain and for Europe. And yes, people will see it at the pumps.
But if this is successful, if Iran becomes...
What does success look like,
well,
though?
if you've taken out a brutal theocratic regime from Iran, if you can therefore secure a grand regional peace settlement of the likes of which the Middle East has never seen in any of our lifetimes, if that is possible without Iran having a nuclear bomb, the price of our oil will eventually, it won't be overnight, but it will start to come down, and you will get prosperity in that region with the Gaza Riviera. I know people lined up to take the mickey out of Trump's Gaza Riviera, but if it is successful and these people in that area can finally have peace, getting rid of the extreme ideological basis for Iran, that is going to help all of us, Freddie.
Maybe. I mean, that sounds like a lovely depiction of maybe perhaps utopian depiction of what could potentially maybe happen years down the line. I'm not sure that's where Trump is at the moment. I'm not sure that's what his key motivation for this is. I don't think he actually knows what his key motivation is. That's why we've had such confusing and contradictory communications coming out of the White House. I think we also have to recognize that what we've learned already, we're 4 weeks into this now, is that there is going to be a huge energy price shock. We've already had a state of emergency declared in the Philippines. The South Korean government have said this week that people need to cut back on showers because they can't afford the energy to fuel that. This is going to have repercussions throughout the world, and I think this sort of maybe blasé throwing forwards of what might potentially happen in the future neglects the present.
But I think, doesn't it, haven't we just, isn't the problem that subsequent Western leaders have just given up on the Middle East? They're always just going to be at war. Israel's always going to be fighting with the Arab nations around there. Just let them get on with it. Let them, you know, kick the living daylights out of each other. And Trump has come in and gone, if not now, when? Because nobody else is going to have the kahunas to take out this administration and get rid of the nuclear bomb.
Well,
am I being utopian?
Look, Bev, the pain at the pump is going to be very serious for Americans over the next 8 months as we go into these midterm elections. However, you look back at the Middle East, and someone in the early 20th century drew a bunch of straight lines over tribal populations who have never gotten along, who have always been at war. For those who are Bible-believing Christians, you read all the way back 3,000 years, people have always been at war in that region. We saw in Afghanistan tribal populations for 20 plus years fight back on American and coalition forces because they cannot work together, because they're constantly fighting over the tribal area that they want. And so I don't think there's a grand peace in the Middle East, and it certainly won't be achieved in this administration.
I wonder, Paul, we haven't got long, but let me just come to you very briefly on this. Am I being utopian as per Freddie's suggestion? I might be. I tend not to be given to utopian thinking. I'm normally cross at people who think along those lines, but surely this has got to be, if the outcome is successful, good for us.
No, I've been asked to give a short and precise answer, and it is correct, Bev. I don't think that's utopian thinking. I think, unfortunately, politically, if Trump was to achieve anything, then that would be seen as negative for some people on the left.
Is that right? Well, we've run out of time, Freddie, but we've got another hour to get stuck into this. So don't go anywhere. We're going to have a very quick look at your weather with Alex. See you in a minute.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. This is your Met Office weather forecast for GB News on this cold, blustery and showery Wednesday. A real change to the weather that we had through much of last week, the weekend, and to start this week, because now we have plenty of showers piling through. Yes, there'll be some sunny spells in between the showers, but most of us will see some rain at times, even some sleet, some snow. Could be some hail, even a bit of thunder mixed in with them as well. And all the time we need to be aware that there will be some strong blustery winds, and they will add to the cold feel of things. Temperatures are way below average for the time of year and feeling even colder, sub-zero in some places because of those strong winds coming in from the north. As we go into this evening, staying showery across, well, many parts, so further hefty showers possible across southern parts of England, across Wales over modest higher ground, something a bit wintry, some sleet, some snow. Similar across northern England, a scattering of showers here. Plenty of showers across Northern Ireland, could be some sleet and snow over higher ground. And across Scotland, well, we're more likely to see snow lying in some places here, mostly over higher ground, but perhaps a little bit to lower levels as well. As we go overnight, we'll start to see most of the showers easing and clearing away. That being said, there will still be some bursts of rain, sleet and snow in some places, but most places will turn dry. Lots of clear skies, the winds easing as well. As a result, temperatures are going to drop quite widely, getting close to, if not below freezing in a few places. And so some frost, some ice is something that we need to watch out for tomorrow morning. Otherwise, though, tomorrow actually a largely fine morning for most of us. Good deal of sunshine. Yes, it's going to be a cold, frosty start for some, but it is going to be often quite sunny through the morning. More cloud building as we go into the afternoon, particularly towards the northwest, with wind and rain pushing into the far northwest later on. Temperatures, well, similar to today, but lighter winds.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays, I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right.
GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Every week there are stories that shape the national conversation.
We'll be discussing that.
And on Saturday Morning Live, we break them down.
Is
that true? This is fascinating, isn't it?
The politics, the headlines, the debates everyone's talking about.
And the questions that you want answered.
Do you think that was a legitimate attack for him to make?
What led you to set up this fantastic movement?
You know what? It's a great question, Olivia.
So what are you waiting for?
Your weekend starts here. Saturdays at 10 a.m. only on GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening, good morning to you live from Washington DC. This is Bev Turner on GB News with the stories shaping Britain and the United States of America.
Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure. I don't like to say this. We've won this. This war has been won.
The war has been won. President Trump very confidently declaring that Iran has agreed never to have a nuclear weapon. He claimed the twisted regime wants to pursue peace talks.
It starts with no nuclear weapons, and they've agreed to that. There won't be any nuclear weapons.
But the Islamic Republic is vowing to fight on until they reach, as they say, complete victory. And tonight, up to 3,000 American troops are said to be bracing for deployment to the Middle East. Meanwhile, the crucial Strait of Hormuz is in dire straits. Iran is believed to have planted tens of mines threatening the world's energy. Britain is now understood to be in talks to help hunt and destroy the hidden devices. Also tonight, the Sussexes, Harry and Meghan, have met their match. Australians have set up a petition saying the government must not use taxpayers' money when they visit there this year. Meanwhile, mark your calendar, we're hearing that King Charles is indeed set to visit Washington at the end of April. What kind of visit might that be? I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Joining me this evening, if you're only just joining us, where have you been? I've got the New Statesman's Freddie Hayward and Republican strategist Matthew Hurt, and in London, GB News contributor Paul Cox. Can I just ask you very quickly, what does that, in answer to that question, what does that state visit look like? We are going to talk about this in a bit more detail. Do you want to see King Charles here hanging out with the president?
I do want to see King Charles, and if he addresses a joint session of Congress, it will be the first time since 1991
yes.
that the Queen did in 1991. This is very exciting for us on this side of the pond.
Are you excited, Freddie?
I'm excited. I think it'll be quite colourful. It'll be great to write about. I'm excited about that for sure.
How about you, Paul Cox? Will you be looking forward to seeing King Charles here in DC?
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I mean, I love just watching it for the body language and how uncomfortable everybody is. But I don't actually think they are. I don't genuinely think they are. If you think back to London, at those big banquets, they actually look like they're getting on like a house on fire. And of course he should go, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, go on.
I was just saying, of course, he should go. I don't know if that was... Nobody asked me that question, and I just started talking, Biff. But what I would say is he should absolutely go, because that visit is way above politics.
Yeah, you're right. You should keep talking, Paul Cox. That's why you're here. That's why we love you. Right, moving on to that main news this evening. President Trump has declared that Iran has agreed never to have a nuclear weapon. He says that America has already won the war.
We killed all their leadership, and then they met to choose new leaders, and we killed all of them. They're going to make a deal. They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. It was oil and gas related, and it was a very nice thing they did. But what it showed me is that we're dealing with the right people. It starts with no nuclear weapons, and they've agreed to that. There won't be any nuclear weapons. Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure. I don't like to say this. We've won this. This war has been won.
You can't fault him, can you? His body language has not changed. His tone has been confident for nearly 4 weeks on this now. Well, tonight, a military spokesperson for the Islamic Republic refuted the claims. They've said they're going to continue to fight until they have complete victory, and they dismissed claims of peace talks as fake news, using the president's famous catchphrase back at him. Meanwhile, it's also been revealed that British forces shot down 14 Iranian attack drones swarming an allied base in northern Iraq last night. So the Pentagon is also reportedly preparing to send 3,000 elite troops to the region who would serve as part of America's emergency response force. And in a further potentially worrying escalation, of course, for the UK, the Iran-linked group claiming responsibility for the firebombing of those Jewish ambulances in North London has said that it will target, quote, US and Israeli interests worldwide. So British defence officials have also now told us that Iran used, quote, experimental missiles when it targeted shared UK-US military bases on Diego Garcia last week. That follows a warning from the Israel Defence Forces, which said that Tehran could now hit targets across Europe, including London. Meanwhile, British officials are said to be preparing to send ships to the Strait of Hormuz as part of a coalition effort to reopen the vital shipping route, as Iran is said to have laid at least a dozen mines in the strait, threatening the world's supply of energy and oil. Now, GB News understands the Prime Minister has tonight held a phone call with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, on which they discussed formulating a viable plan to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. My panel are still here with me. From the New Statesman, Freddie Haywood, and Republican strategist Matthew Hurt and Paul Cox in London. Right, gentlemen, it's so hard to know with this topic because it is so vast where to start. And at this time of the night, what time is it here in DC? It's just after 10 o'clock here. Sometimes at this time of the night, President Trump will jump on Truth Social, and he will put something that he hasn't said. So we are watching that closely because he can often surprise us. But as he goes to bed tonight in that house just down the road, do you think he genuinely believes it when he says the war is won?
You know, Bev, I think he may believe it. What do I want, or what do most Americans want out of this? I didn't want to go there, but we are there, and so I want geopolitical success. What does geopolitical success look like? It does not look like a mission accomplished on a carrier like George W. Bush 20 years ago. I want the United States to be able to secure whatever military and political aims it is trying to accomplish, but if the president says mission is accomplished, and then we're still here with boots on the ground in 3 months and 6 months, that'll have wide-ranging political ramifications for the midterm elections, but it's also a very serious consideration to commit men and women in uniform to long-term commitment, which the United States, because, I mean, President Trump chose J.D. Vance as his vice president. J.D. Vance, a veteran of the global war on terror who campaigned against foreign policy adventurism like what we're seeing now. So I think the American people are tired of this kind of thing, and there has to be some sort of success in Iran that translates to success among the American people. And I don't think it's mission accomplished on the back of a carrier.
No. Freddie, we're looking at 7 or 8 months now out to the midterms. The worst case scenario for the president is he hasn't got a stable regime installed. Iran's military capability hasn't been completely wiped out, and he has to somehow backpedal and bring troops home, leaving a mess in the Middle East. That is the worst case scenario. Can he achieve the opposite without greater inclusion, do you think, by other countries, particularly the UK?
Well, the UK is in a very interesting position right now. Keir Starmer is trying to bring together these European countries, and I think they've gone to Asian countries as well, to get a coalition or a task force to try and reopen the strait. The obvious problem with this plan is British military impotence. That's been exposed repeatedly throughout this war, and it's one of the only good things really to have happened is that people are much more aware of the reality of British armed forces. I think there's also a question about how they can divvy up their forces between the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. This has been a big concern for the Germans, for instance. We've not yet had a completely coherent position from the Europeans, but I think what the British government have been trying to do relatively successfully is to separate themselves from the Trump's war itself, the Trump and Israel's war, and say that we will be involved in trying to ameliorate some of the worst things that we've seen.
Yeah. Paul Cox, let me come to you on this. I know that sometimes President Trump doesn't rate brilliantly in the popularity of the British public. We can say that, not really surprising given how he's depicted in most of the left-wing press, not least the BBC, perhaps it's fair to say. But what is the appetite, would you say, in the UK for us to get involved in order to neutralise the risk from Iran to the UK? And when we hear headlines like I've just said then about the fact that there may be capabilities to hit the UK, that's surely going to wake people up.
I don't think there's much appetite at all, Bev, and I'm not surprised by that. I have some appetite for that personally, because I think that it's very important that this war is won and it's tied in a nice neat bow at the top when it's finished. But one of the reasons that there's no appetite here is, you've already pointed out, there's huge division in this country. Anybody who's on the left and entirely relies on the description of Donald Trump given to you by the BBC, The Guardian, Channel 4, etc., they're just carte blanche accepting that Donald Trump has no idea what he's doing. We don't know what Donald Trump is doing. That doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's doing. It's a terrifying position for us to be in sometimes, but I'm glad he operates in this way. And the one thing that gives me solace about Donald Trump is, irrespective of what anyone tells you, the man is a winner. Look at where he is in life. The man is a winner. Simple as that. It's not by accident he's got here. You might not like his strategy, his techniques, his mannerisms, his character, his personality. You might not like any of that. But I'm the sort of guy who's driven by output, and Donald Trump is too. Output is everything. He's a successful guy, and I think we need to rely on that to some degree. I also think we should get behind him. We should get behind him. We have forgotten, because we have this luxury now, particularly in the West, where we don't feel like we're under attack at any point, even though we could well be, if anything's to be believed, that we just don't think that it affects us. Oh, we don't need to do anything. Why would we get involved? It doesn't affect us. It's just oil prices. They'll go up, they'll come down. It's not as simple as that. It's simply not as simple as that.
Have we been complacent, Freddie, in the UK? I've had so many brilliant military experts on this show in the last 4 weeks who have been raising the alarm about how incapacitated our military is. I think you use the word impotent, which is just as appropriate, actually. And why have we not invested in our military over subsequent governments? Do you have any idea?
I think there are many reasons. One interesting reason, I think, is our dependence on America, and our belief in the special relationship has led to this idea that we can allow the military to be emaciated because we sit underneath the American security umbrella. The French have had a very different approach since the Suez Crisis in 1956 to have a much more independent military in terms of their supply chains, the nuclear deterrent, whatever it might be. The British government have taken a completely different gone in a completely different direction, and I do think that's part of the so-called special relationship, this belief that Britain has access to the American military that other countries
and I do wonder as well, Matthew, whether it is because we were labouring under the illusion that war in the future would be cyber. We weren't going to have these, we're never going to need our tanks, we're never going to need that many bombs or missile defence systems, because the future of war would be online, it would be crashing computers, taking down systems. That's being exposed as naive.
Well, and I think the broader question here is NATO, and again, that United States military security for most of Europe, where countries like France and Germany and Great Britain were able to pull back on the military spending and benefit from the largesse of American bases across Western Europe and across most of the globe for the last 50 years, and that allowed you that permission to step back and spend a little bit less. I think what Marco Rubio did several weeks ago in Europe to say, we want you to be as great as you can be, and we'd love to be the American partner for a strong France, for a strong Great Britain, for a strong Germany, and that includes spending more on defense so that you're able to tackle some of these issues, which may turn into a hot war in a place like Iran.
Yeah. Well, let's hope we don't get dragged into it any further, I guess, at the moment. But let's just move on. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's talk now to the foreign policy analyst and editor-in-chief at the Foreign Desk, the absolutely superb Lisa Daftari, who joins me again on Late Show Live. Lisa, always a joy to see you and hear what you have to say. We saw President Trump talking this afternoon in the White House, very confident, saying that he's had this present from Iran. We don't know what that is, something to do with oil and gas that was worth a huge amount of money. So your reaction, really, from about what we've heard today?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. This is Trump foreign policy. We have seen it many times before. He employs the strategic ambiguity to the T. It's textbook style, where all options are on the table. No one knows what Donald Trump will do. Only Donald Trump knows what Donald Trump will do. And if you watch, half of the media today treated his comments as though the war is over. And so many who are in favor of pushing towards regime collapse, leading to regime change, were in a panic. Can this war be over? Well, you know, Donald Trump and everyone around him, including his generals, are very, very smart people, can walk and chew gum at the same time. So could it be true that they are, in fact, pursuing negotiations? Yes. And could it also be true that they will continue bombing to reach their strategic objectives? Yes, that is true, too. He is not a simple man. He is not a naive man. As much as he loves a good deal, he also knows the adversary that he is up against. And let me tell you, the things that he is asking of the regime, it is impossible to get the regime to agree to. As you can see, the regime on the face of it today is actually rejecting the idea that there are even word talks. So I think there's a huge gap between what he's talking about and how that will be achieved. So I think all options on the table.
And those issues, Lisa, might include, but not just restricted to, no uranium enrichment, only a civil nuclear program that would be able to be observed by a UN watchdog, and that would be from a fuel farm outside of Iran, for instance. This 15-point plan, which apparently is an iteration of the same agreement that was drawn up in May 2025. If the majority of the regime that were in place then are now dead or deposed, let's say, from Tehran, how relevant will that agreement be compared to a year ago? Does it need to be ripped up and something completely different drawn up now?
Well, if you ask me, I've been studying this regime for over 20 years. It is impossible to see regime change within this regime. It will only be a personnel change. It will not be regime change. The very existence of this regime is equivalent to having deadly weapons, to having a nuclear program, to enriching uranium, to having ballistic missiles, to feeding the proxies, and continuing on and on and on, and isolating themselves from the West, because that's the pattern we will play here. That's the whack-a-mole, right? So for 47 years, they have fortified themselves, and that's why they have thousands and thousands of operatives. We're not just dealing with the head of the snake, we're also dealing with the body and the tentacles that are throughout the first few tiers of the regime. Right now, they have gone through the first tier, absolutely. They're making their way through the second tier with the Basij, the IRGC operatives, but there are thousands and thousands of them. The best case scenario here
is that makes
that
it sound hopeless, Lisa. That makes it sound as though President Trump has got a mountain to climb, and he's at the moment in the foothills, and he will not be able to achieve his aim of summiting that mountain and coming down the other side to a land of peace.
Well, I understand it is much, much more complex and nuanced than the Venezuela example was. So when people throw around, you know, we wanted Darcy Rodriguez, we removed the Maduro, we did not. This is not a fair comparison at all. This regime has built itself long ways and sideways and up and down. It has fortified itself, but it's not impossible. If the Israeli army and the United States continue to chip away at the Basij and IRGC operatives, there will be defection and surrender at scale. At that point, there will be regime collapse. Then we can talk about regime change. It is not impossible. And let me tell you, just one last point here is that for the United States to meet its objectives that it started out with in terms of this regime not having nuclear weapons, not having a ballistic missile program, of not having proxies throughout the world, and for Israel to remove an existential threat that will absolutely want to take it off the map for decades to come, this war needs to continue. The Israelis know that. Donald Trump knows that. Now, if there is talk of negotiation, well, that can happen side by side, them continuing on with their main objectives. Because again, in those 15 points, we saw, you know, these are ultimatums that we have not been able to even chip away at the various rounds of negotiations that they have already had. What did they do after each time we gave the regime a drop of breathing space? The centrifuges continued to spin. The IAEA cameras were shut off. They put more money into their proxies, and they continue to build their ballistic missile program. So, and of course, let's not forget the thousands and thousands of protesters that were killed at home in Iran.
Absolutely. 35 to 40,000 of Iranian people. Lisa, such pleasure as always. Lisa Daftari there from the Foreign Desk. Let me know your thoughts this evening, gbnews.com /your say. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live, the Sussexes have met their match. Harry and Meghan are being told by angry Australians that not a single dollar of taxpayer money must be spent when these two go to Sydney this year. We, however, are going to be crossing live to Sydney to get the very latest. Plus other royal news, mark your calendar. It looks like King Charles could be set to visit Washington, D.C. at the end of next month. Well, that will be lovely, won't it? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. So that Harry and Meghan story that I have been trailing. Now, they've been hitting the headlines, and as ever, they're causing a stir. A petition urging the Australian government not to contribute to the security costs for the couple has got over 32,000 signatures. So Meghan had already raised a few eyebrows following reports that she's due to host a pricey wellness weekend at a 5-star hotel on the trip. So let's get the information about this. Let's just dig a little deeper into this ridiculous story. Journalist and broadcaster Angela Mollard. Now, Angela, when I say it's a ridiculous story, I don't mean the story itself is ridiculous. I think it's got all the greatest points of a really good TV story. However, it does feature Meghan Markle hosting a wellness retreat. What? Tell us more about it.
I know. I mean, you go from being royalty to basically a kind of Gwyneth Paltrow 2.0. And what you mentioned at the start of your introduction there is that we don't actually want them here. We don't want to pay for them being here. And this is a huge reversal on 2018 when they were here. We absolutely love them. They stayed at the Governor General's mansion overlooking Sydney Harbour. They had those first shots when they announced that Meghan was pregnant with Archie, with the Opera House in the background. We couldn't get enough of them. Meghan baked banana bread. She sat on the beach at Bondi. All these years later, 8 years later, we do not want them here. This is an event for rich, wealthy women. They're paying, I think, about £1,400 for a ticket. We know Harry signed up for a psychosocial mental health event of some sort. But apart from that, there are no other appointments. But the public, they do not want to be paying for this.
Can you think of anything worse? I might bring my panel in now, Angela, if you don't mind, gentlemen. Can you think of anything worse than having to spend a few days with Meghan Markle? I think it's about $1,700, Angela, as you say, about 1,400 quid. Well, she swans around. I think it's about 300 people were there telling you. I think it's called Your Best Life. I'm going to just find the detail, but I think it's called something like Live Your Best Life. Is that your idea of fun, Matthew?
You know, Angela mentioned Gwyneth Paltrow. I would love a Vegemite face mask and a cuddle a koala for the weekend, but I don't think it should be subsidized by the taxpayers of Australia. I haven't cared about Meghan Markle since she was on Suits, a very popular
she was very good in that.
Very good show. And I don't care nearly as much as I care about King Charles coming to the United States, coming to Washington, D.C. But this is something clearly Australians don't want this visit, and they certainly don't want it to be underwritten by the taxpayers if this is a jaunt through Sydney and Melbourne to talk to wealthy white women.
What do you think, Freddie?
I don't have a very strong opinion on this, I must say. I mean, is it an interesting weekend? I think it would be an amusing weekend. I'm sure there would be certain scenes that would play out like a sketch show. But no, it's not something that is top of my mind each morning.
Yeah, apparently it's called Her Best Life. It's in Sydney, like we said, in April. There's been some speculation, actually, Angela, that the venue isn't even ready, overlooking the beautiful Sydney Harbour. The venue isn't ready. 1,500 quid they're going to pay, and I do wonder as well whether they will get much time with Meghan herself, because presumably that's what they're paying for.
Absolutely. You know, they've got a weekend. She's going to headline one event. But also, what is she going to say that she hasn't said on those multiple podcasts that she's already done, mostly speaking about herself? Look, I think the questions could be interesting. If I was sitting in the audience, I'd have some hot questions for her. But as you say, that hotel has not been finished yet. The pool is in disarray. The bedrooms, I think the bedrooms are finished, but yeah, it's a lot of money. And Australians don't actually support, the ordinary Australian. We're all about mateship, service, loyalty. What Meghan and Harry represent a betrayal of the late Queen and the King. And, you know, we may be looking at a public republic in the future, but generally we believe in mateship and standing up for one another in this country, and we don't feel that Meghan represents that.
And I do wonder why she's chosen Australia to host her first health retreat. It sounds much more LA than Australian, when the Aussies are kind of, you know, they tend not to be impressed by this sort of superficial nonsense, do they? They're all, I think of Australians as being very down to earth. I know I'm generalising. Let me give you the quote from the Sussexes, if you don't mind. They've said, "It is a moot point. The trip is being funded privately. I'm not sure what this petition hopes to achieve. Of course, if you wanted to dive into the ridiculousness of this petition as an agenda for spreading misinformation, then one could equally hypothesise that there are approximately 26.5 million Australians who haven't signed it. That's 99.98% of the population, who must therefore agree with the taxpayer picking up the tab for their visit. They said, of course, that is another equally stupid assertion to make, but why let common sense get in the way of a good story? That's what they've said. Just dig that apart for us, if you don't mind, Angela.
I've covered the royals for 30 years, including a decade when I lived in London. I have never seen anyone in the royal family or royal family adjacent respond in this manner to a petition. Why do they have to comment on everything? You give it legitimacy when you comment on it. And it's so petty. That's not what we're about. To comment that 98.98% of us. Well, I haven't signed the petition. 99.98. Well, I haven't signed the petition, and yet I don't want taxpayer money being spent on it. So there's, I would say, probably another 80% of the country that feel likewise. But I just can't understand why the Sussexes feel the need to comment on it. As for why they're targeting Australia, Meghan has just trademarked her as ever brand here, and I think they see us as a soft landing place to launch globally. As a Commonwealth country, we've always loved them. I think they'll get a surprise when they get here.
OK, thank you so much for joining me tonight, Angela. What a pleasure to have you with me. Yeah, I mean, I feel a bit like you, Freddie. I sort of tend to... They don't kind of set my world like Harry and Meghan, and I genuinely wanted to love them. I did love them when they first arrived as a couple. I thought they were fantastic. But I think it's just the blatant narcissism that I find problematic.
Yeah, I mean, it's their trademark now. They seem to be very good at that. I mean, I've seen some of the clips, I must say, from some of her Netflix shows, which are equally amusing. We should probably see it in that regard.
Yeah, and it's also just the fact that they don't seem to have anybody in their life that will tell them the truth. And anybody that does tell them the truth, they just seem to kick them out of the inner circle.
You know, that's a great point, Bev. I'm still thinking about that Vegemite face mask and cuddling a koala tonight, so. Or a kangaroo.
Well, in other royal news, King Charles is set for a trip of his own. So there's been some reports of whether it was on or whether it was off. But today it's being reported that King Charles is going to address a joint session of Congress at the end of April here in Washington, D.C. It's believed a state visit will take place as part of America's 250th anniversary celebrations, and it's going to mark the first time a British royal has addressed the chamber since Queen Elizabeth II in 1991. Thank you for your fact on that as well, Matthew. Now, this also comes at a time when the relationship between President Trump and Keir Starmer is, of course, rapidly deteriorating amidst the fallout from the Iran conflict. Let's talk now to political commentator, friend of the show, Hilary Fordwich. Hilary, great to see you. Thank you so much. So this is cause for celebration, isn't it? That the King will be here with the President, and that might bring our two countries together in a way that the PM has not quite been able to do so.
Well, absolutely. You're totally correct there, Bev. We know that our special relationship has been at an all-time low, with President Trump commenting that Sir Keir Starmer, to Keir, is no Winston Churchill. And of course, he was absolutely horrified that the US wasn't even allowed to use those bases, Diego Garcia, the joint bases for the launch into Iran. So I think this is really important. And actually, if we could just link these two stories together with regard to Meghan Markle and Harry going down to Australia, you know, what's happened down there with that petition, that's really a bellwether about the brand of where the Sussexes are right now. And then so the entire royal family has to really work now at their overall brand, their acceptance, the global brand, and how literally the monarchy is being perceived across the world. Because of course we have the Andrew scandal, then with, you know, obviously the falling out of Prince Harry with the royal family. I think this is a very important time, Bev, because this is the first time since Queen Elizabeth II, our beloved Queen, addressed the joint session back in 1991. And importantly, they were going to be in recess, and now they're going to make sure that they're all in town. Both sides of the aisle are going to be there.
Yeah.
And I think an opportunity for that soft power to really make a difference, Bev.
And what does King Charles need to say? We're going to be asking that, aren't we, for the next 4 weeks? But what does he need to say at that point, Hilary? He's got to tread a very diplomatic line.
Well, I think he does, but I think in some ways it's really very simple. He needs to emphasize and focus on all that has been great and special about the special enduring relationship. And if he keeps using the words enduring, how it has endured and how we have stood shoulder to shoulder, not only in I guess if he talks about wars, then that would bring in this war, wouldn't it? But if he can just keep using the word about an enduring relationship, what we have endured together, shoulder to shoulder, that's what he needs to focus on.
Freddie, what do you think about King Charles's visit here? What does he need to say? Can he do anything? He's meant to be apolitical, of course. He is apolitical. Is that what the UK needs to bring us a little closer to our longest-standing ally, America?
I think that's certainly the point, and number 10 will be hoping that he'll be able to soothe some of the tensions and disagreements that have built up in the past few weeks. I think it is quite a seismic and quite an important moment, and he will of course be thinking about Canada and the fact that Trump has made those claims in his first year. I think that actually hit quite hard within the palace, and there was certainly some anger at the White House over that issue. So that will be in the back of his mind. But as ever, I think number 10 will be ensuring that the messages they want to be delivered are delivered by someone who's very popular in America.
And do you think King Charles is open to those sorts of suggestions? I just can't help but feel, Hilary, that maybe if Queen Elizabeth was handed a piece of paper by subsequent governments that she oversaw, she might cast an eye down it and say, I'm on board with your message, but I'm going to say this in my words. Is King Charles the same character?
Well, I think King Charles has a great sense in terms of how to deal with President Trump, and I think that's very good. He's maintained a good relationship with him. They were pen pals when President Trump wasn't president. So I think that he has a good sense of the man. That's what's really important. So I do think he, in this moment, will say the right thing. So far, publicly, he's been known to always be right on the mark. And don't forget also that I think President Trump has a great affinity for Prince William and Princess Catherine, and there is talk of them also making a visit as well. So I think overall, it'll be up to our king to put the special relationship back where it needs to be.
Paul Cox, do you agree? Is that going to be King Charles' job, and is he going to do it well?
I think King Charles will do a fantastic job. I genuinely do. Hillary's right. Of course she's right. She's brilliant at this stuff. But what I mean is, they did remain in touch when he wasn't president of the US, and he did so because he valued that relationship. One thing King Charles knows is how to talk to Donald Trump, and somebody like Donald Trump. Donald Trump needs a little bit of smoke blowing. He needs to know that you know that he is in some way special, and you can do that if you are King Charles, because Donald Trump really does value the tradition and history of the royal family. Obviously, it's been mentioned a million times that his mum was a Scot, and he loves the idea of having that connection. And the fact that King Charles is going to be addressing Congress is a huge thing as well. I'd love to see Kate and Wills go. That would be amazing.
Matthew, what do the Americans think of our royal family, would you say, in 2026?
Well, you know, here this weekend, we're going to have tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of no kings protesters, left-wing agitators who are opposed to President Trump. But I think we're very excited about this particular king, King Charles, visiting, and I think it sends a significant message that rises above politics here as America celebrates its 250th anniversary and this very special relationship. And I think, as Paul has said, he's very, very right here, the relationship between President Trump and King Charles is one that is on solid footing, and King Charles is going to make some statements. He has aims, or he will have aims, in Washington, D.C. President Trump is a little more unpredictable, and so you hope that both of those messages are congruent, or at least complementary, as King Charles visits Washington.
Yeah, and just to explain to people who don't understand, the No Kings protest, their suggestion is that President Trump behaves like a king. Really, what they mean is a dictator, because an actual true king, like ours in the UK, is not political at all and doesn't have those sorts of powers. Anyway, Hilary, thank you so much. Hilary Fordwich there. Great to see you. Thank you for joining us on The Late Show Live. I'll see you back in the studio again soon. Thanks, gentlemen. Let's take a quick look at some of the other main news here tonight in America. Breaking in the past few moments, Florida Democrats have flipped a long vacant Republican state house seat in the Palm Beach district that includes Mar-a-Lago. That's President Trump's own backyard. Democrat Emily Gregory beats Republican John Maples in a special election to fill the seat left empty when GOP lawmaker Mike Caruso stepped down last August to become the county's clerk. I'll find out from my Americans guests in just a minute what the significance of that might be. Elsewhere, a court in New Mexico has ordered Meta to pay $375 million for misleading users over the safety of its platforms for children. A jury found the company liable for the way in which its platforms endangered children and exposed them to sexually explicit material and contact with sexual predators. A spokeswoman for Meta said the company disagrees with the verdict and intends to appeal. Also tonight, US immigration and customs enforcement agents have been deployed to airports across the country because thousands of security staff are going without pay or refusing to work. This is due to this partial government shutdown that began on the 14th of February. Meanwhile, back in Britain, transgender girls have been given until September to leave the Girl Guides. The organisation says that membership will now be restricted to girls and young women following last year's Supreme Court ruling defining sex as biological sex in equality law. Girl Guiding says it remains committed to supporting marginalised communities, but campaigners have called the decision heartbreaking. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. New details have been released after that Air Canada plane struck that fire truck at New York's LaGuardia airport. We talked about it last night, but we know a little bit more now about why it happened. More on that after this. This is The Late Show Live. Let's have a quick look at your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, this is your Met Office weather forecast for GB News on this cold, blustery and showery Wednesday. A real change to the weather that we had through much of last week, the weekend, and to start this week, because now we have plenty of showers piling through. Yes, there'll be some sunny spells in between the showers, but most of us will see some rain at times, even some sleet, some snow. Could be some hail, even a bit of thunder mixed in with them as well. And all the time we need to be aware that there will be some strong, blustery winds, and they will add to the cold feel of things. Temperatures are way below average for the time of year and feeling even colder, sub-zero in some places because of those strong winds coming in from the north. As we go into this evening, staying showery across, well, many parts, so further hefty showers possible across southern parts of England, across Wales over modest higher ground, something a bit wintry, some sleet, some snow. Similar across northern England, a scattering of showers here. Plenty of showers across Northern Ireland, could be some sleet and snow over higher ground. And across Scotland, well, we're more likely to see snow lying in some places here, mostly over higher ground, but perhaps a little bit to lower levels as well. As we go overnight, we'll start to see most of the showers easing and clearing away. That being said, there will still be some bursts of rain, sleet and snow in some places, but most places will turn dry. Lots of clear skies, the winds easing as well. As a result, temperatures are going to drop quite widely, getting close to, if not below freezing in a few places. And so some frost, some ice is something that we need to watch out for tomorrow morning. Otherwise, though, tomorrow actually a largely fine morning for most of us. Good deal of sunshine. Yes, it's going to be a cold, frosty start for some, but it is going to be often quite sunny through the morning. More cloud building as we go into the afternoon, particularly towards the northwest, with wind and rain pushing into the far northwest later on. Temperatures, well, similar to today, but lighter winds.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
GB Loyalty Points is here. They're our way of saying thank you for spending time with GB News. Through commenting on your say, voting in You Decide polls and shaping the debate, you can earn GB Loyalty Points. Unlock rewards, reach milestones and climb leaderboards. Don't just watch our programmes, come and be part of them. Get started by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/loyalty points.
At this stage of the investigation, we don't limit ourselves. So we have questions on everything. And we look for everything, we collect everything. We may have information that comes our way that we didn't expect, so we don't rule anything out until later. So we have a lot of questions on everything.
That was the chairwoman of the National Transportation Safety Board, Jennifer Homendy, speaking earlier today after a preliminary assessment found concerns about overnight staffing levels in the air traffic control tower and possible technological failures that may have contributed to the collision at New York's LaGuardia airport. So 2 pilots were killed. We discussed it last night. 43 passengers and crew were injured when the Air Canada plane operated by Jazz Aviation collided with a fire truck after landing. This footage was so shocking, Matthew, yesterday, and it was remarkable that more people weren't killed. The details that are now emerging as well, there was one of the air stewards was found 100 feet out of the plane, still strapped to a chair, and she's fine. I mean, just the most extraordinary story. But what does it tell you about the mistakes? Now we're getting a little sense of what happened. Who's to blame?
Well, it's a heartbreaking story. Air traffic controllers is one of the most difficult jobs that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Long hours, it's very complicated. There is quite a bit of automation, but there's a lot of individuals communicating in real time with aircraft at very high speeds. And so we have in the United States the National Transportation Safety Board that investigates things like this, plane crashes, train crashes, other things like this. And I'm certain they will get to the bottom of it. But it is a mix of probably technological gaps and human error, which happens in any job, and it is heartbreaking to see in this situation that an error in this regard leads to the loss of human life.
It never fails to amaze me, Freddie, how quickly the Americans deal with these situations. Our inquiries would be going on for months after something like this. I know that they're saying this is the initial inquiries, and how much they report to the public about what happened as well. Is this because of partly the shutdown? Is that going to be one of the conclusions, that the air traffic controllers were underfunded and therefore understaffed at this time, do you think? Who knows?
Maybe there was an allusion to that. It sounds like human error played a big role. We saw that in the newspapers this morning. There was a recording released that we've now heard. It's utterly tragic, but it seems as if this is part of a broader story as well as of a breakdown of the TSA and the way in which security at airports is working. So I think it's inevitable that the two will be linked. But let's see what the report says.
And I'm paraphrasing here, but the air traffic controller who was in charge says something like, "I messed up," doesn't he? He was just saying, "I've messed up, or I made a mistake." Like, and his colleague is saying, no, you didn't. You did the best that you could. But Paul Cox, just on a human level, this story, I can't imagine the devastation of the families who've lost the pilots, but also that man who made that decision. And when he said stop, 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 and that first vehicle, the first fire truck, didn't hear him, and he was saying, "Stop, truck one, stop." And who knows? But I mean, that poor guy, he must be devastated tonight.
Yeah, it's incredible. Obviously, my thoughts go out to the families of those two pilots that passed away. It's incredible that no one else died. It's incredible that no one in the fire truck passed away. The fire truck, I just don't understand how they survived. Well, one thing I would say is, why couldn't the fire truck here? I've watched the video a couple of times, but just not morbid curiosity, just... It's devastating. How can this seems so rudimental that this shouldn't happen. It seems like one of those things that we rely so much on technology these days. You think this would be impossible. A fire truck could be going across the airport runway as the plane is landing. And the idea that because of a political reason above what's going on at the airport has potentially caused this as well, with regards to there just not being enough people available due to people stepping down because of the political issue. That to me also is incredible. There should have to be some jobs that just remain irrespective. Surely, Bev, we should never be saying this should never happen again. We should only ever be saying this should never happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Paul. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. Why has the German president compared President Trump to Vladimir Putin? And are we heading to the moon again? More on that next. No breaks, just a quick pause here. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. First, though, let's have a quick look at some of the main stories on the front page of tomorrow's newspapers. The New York Times is reporting... Oh, we know we're going to go on to the NASA story. Marvellous. Glad we're doing this. So, NASA are saying that they are setting out a new base on the moon. So this is the New York Times. They're reporting NASA has announced an ambitious long-range plan to spend $20 billion over the next 7 years to build a moon base near the lunar South Pole, featuring habitats, pressurized rovers and nuclear power systems. The announcement comes just over a week before NASA's Artemis 2 is set to take off for its mission around the moon. And NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman has kicked off a series of meetings with contractors at NASA headquarters in Washington, saying he's envisaging launching 2 moon landing missions per year to establish semi-permanent astronaut occupation on the lunar surface so that they can explore, to conduct research and development of the technology needed for eventual flights to Mars. Paul Cox, let me come to you on this. Sometimes I handle a story on this show that makes me think I'm living in a parallel universe and we can't actually be in a place where NASA are holding meetings for contractors to pitch for the job of building headquarters on the moon. Am I actually asleep, Paul? I don't think we can go to Paul at the moment. I don't know why. Maybe he's fallen off his chair in shock, Freddie, at the idea that we might be going to the moon. NASA apparently wants us to start believing again. Are you on board with this?
I think it's really interesting. They have quite a clear plan. They have 3 different phases. There's going to be, as you say, these rovers that go out there, and then eventually they want to have a permanent base there. But the other thing that we should note is that there's a geopolitical angle to this. China have also said that they want to get someone on the moon, I think by 2030. So there's another space race in its germinating in front of us right now, and if that's going to spur people to go to the moon, then it will make for quite the spectacle.
Have we not got better things to do, Matthew? Have we not got better things to spend taxpayers' money on? Have you not, Americans, got better things to spend your money on?
Look, two overarching things have happened in the last decade. President Trump, in the first administration, was able to launch the Space Force. And Elon Musk and SpaceX, Elon Musk has said a number of times he wants to go to Mars. So we have a government that has established a defense industry operation, the Space Force, to go out eventually and engage in interstellar conflict, but also a futurist like Elon Musk who wants to see exploration to the moon and Mars. And so you have those two things, government and the private sector, who are interested in doing something like this. It is not a surprise to me, but it is not anything like the cartoons of the mid-50s that envision the future with the flying cars. But this is something I think that we are on track to do.
I don't know whether we can go to Paul Cox. Paul, have you picked yourself up off the floor in the studio there in London? I just would love to be a fly on the wall at these meetings with contractors who are pitching for the job of building these NASA headquarters. I mean, how do you do your health and safety assessment for a trip to the moon?
You could sell them literally anything, because unlike any other construction job, there's no baseline or paradigm to compare it against. Whatever they say is what it is the first time anything like this is ever going to happen. Look, for me, I've got this problem with this. I look at this, part of me thinks, why on earth are they doing this now against the context of what's going on planet Earth? And the other part of me says, can I be the first to go, please, because I've had enough of all this nonsense down here.
Well, it might be a boy thing, because I couldn't care less about going to the moon. We've got enough problems on this planet to deal with without going to create more on other planets. Which of you was it that said about conflict then? Was that you, Matthew?
Oh, yeah, interstellar conflict.
Interstellar conflict.
Oh, brilliant.
We've got enough conflict here. Why is it that blokes in power want interstellar conflict?
We have to be ready for the aliens.
Oh, give me strength. You think I'm the conspiracy theorist here, don't you, Freddie? I don't believe that the aliens are coming, do you?
Not that I'm aware of. I've missed that prediction. We should definitely report that if we knew.
Yeah.
But we don't know that. So let's hold off on that for the moment.
I'm flabbergasted by this story. I think it's absolutely extraordinary that people are looking to still go to the moon again. Right, moving on. In other news, The Telegraph is reporting that Germany's president has compared Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin, saying that both had destroyed their country's relationship with Europe. This is Frank Walter Steinmeier, who's issued a stinging criticism of Mr. Trump's war in Iran and suggested there was no going back for the Transatlantic alliance since Mr. Trump began his second term. Just as I believe there will be no going back in relations with Russia before February 24, 2022, so too do I believe there will be no going back in transatlantic relations before January the 20th, 2025, he said, alluding to Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and Mr. Trump's inauguration day. So, is he right, the German president? That's bleak.
It seems like he compared Russia's invasion of Ukraine to Trump's inauguration. Now, you can have a disagreement about foreign policy and what is going on in Iran, but just that President Trump took office seems... we know in the United States that many Europeans don't like President Trump and don't like how he governs, but this is sort of an extreme position taken by someone in a country that we consider an ally. It's a little shocking.
It is a bit shocking. It's almost like as Trump has built up the rhetoric against Europe and isolated himself a little bit, Freddie, Germany's hit back.
Well, I think we're seeing that across the board, across the continent. It's been a big problem, actually, for right-wing parties in most European countries. Their loyalty to Trump, their friendship with MAGA has actually become a big problem because it sort of refutes their claim to be focused on their own national countries. It undermines their claim to be representatives of their own national sovereignty, and that's why, as another aspect of this split. So I also don't think this is going to be a temporary change. I think this is a much more permanent, long-term reevaluation of how Europeans and Americans see each other. Even if there's a Democrat in the White House, I think it'll be a big problem for Europeans to go back and trust the Americans again.
Because it's not all Europeans, is it, Paul? He gets on very well with Giorgia Meloni, with the President of Hungary, with Poland. He has his allies in Europe. There's just quite a clear gap between the political left, if you want to use these old-fashioned terms, and the political right. And this statement, it just tells us quite how left-wing so many European countries are.
Yeah. Europe is largely led by wet flannel of the wettest flannels of men I've ever seen. Giorgia Meloni is the standout there, and all the other leaders you mentioned are on the right, so of course they are more likely to side with Donald Trump. But I don't know who the president of Germany believes he's trying to win over here, because Germany, France, Austria, anyone in Central Europe, the UK, we are entirely reliant on our security as a very minimum on the United States of America, whoever the president is. So just get over it. This isn't about what you think about Donald Trump. This is about what you think about the relationship between mainland Europe, the European leaders, and its biggest ally in the United States. The whole idea that they get involved in this sort of playground, I don't like Donald Trump and I don't like what he says business, to me is just a massive weakness.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's finish with a few views from our viewers this evening. Paul has said, I agree with Preston Byrne. That was the story earlier about free speech. Say what you want. I will never be offended. I may laugh. I may disagree with you, but I will never get angry or frightened or upset. Martin says, Donald Trump's done more than our Prime Minister has. And Alexandra says, great job, Bev. Thank you. Trump doing God's work. Trump doing astoundingly. Freddie, stop stifling that laugh for all our pro-Trump viewers out there. They know what they're talking about. Utopian thinking, maybe. Matthew, Freddie, Paul Cox in London. All of you at home, thank you so much. I'll be back tomorrow night, 8 p.m. DC, midnight in the UK. See you then.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. This is your Met Office weather forecast for GB News on this cold, blustery and change to the weather that we had through much of last week, the weekend, and to start this week, because now we have plenty of showers piling through. Yes, there'll be some sunny spells in between the showers, but most of us will see some rain at times, even some sleet, some snow. Could be some hail, even a bit of thunder mixed in with them as well. And all the time we need to be aware that there will be some strong blustery winds, and they will add to the cold feel of things. Temperatures are way below average for the time of year and feeling even colder, sub-zero in some places because of those strong winds coming in from the north. As we go into this evening, staying showery across, well, many parts, so further hefty showers possible across southern parts of England, across Wales over modest higher ground, something a bit wintry, some sleet, some snow. Similar across northern England, a scattering of showers here. Plenty of showers across Northern Ireland, could be some sleet and snow over higher ground. And across Scotland, well, we're more likely to see snow lying in some places here, mostly over higher ground, but perhaps a little bit to lower levels as well. As we go overnight, we'll start to see most of the showers easing and clearing away. That being said, there will still be some bursts of rain, sleet and snow in some places, but most places will turn dry. Lots of clear skies, the winds easing as well. As a result, temperatures are going to drop quite widely, getting close to, if not below freezing in a few places. And so some frost, some ice is something that we need to watch out for tomorrow morning. Otherwise, though, tomorrow actually a largely fine morning for most of us. Good deal of sunshine. Yes, it's going to be a cold, frosty start for some, but it is going to be often quite sunny through the morning. More cloud building as we go into the afternoon, particularly towards the northwest, with wind and rain pushing into the far northwest later on. Temperatures, well, similar to today, but lighter winds.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday Five.
You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
the People's Channel?
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me. Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're
the failure
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all